Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagoshnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And on the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, how are you this fine evening?
We just spent, an hour? Actually, I just looked at the clock. An hour and 45 minutes talking about nothing of value, so I'm doing great.
The Patreon episode is going to be stellar out of all of this. At some point it devolved into a discussion involving Johnny Munt, and I feel like it went in a positive direction.
Yeah,
so
it was tearful stories about lemons and elephants, which I don't even think that's going to make. That's a James call. It turned into some Johnny Munt impressions? ? That's probably not a good way to put it.
That's probably not it either. Well, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are having as much fun as we are. Hope you guys are having a good summer. It's still training camp stuff. We got a game to review, oddly enough, as far as the first preseason game goes, rather. And we've got a couple of signings, some looking at training camp, and of course the mailbag as well. But before we begin, we've got a couple things we'd like to say. And before we start shilling, I am going to hand off to Arif to talk to you about his new venture.
Yeah. So as most of you have probably learned, especially if you're on the Patreon, I just added you to the mailing list. So surprise. The Pro Football Network let me go, and I reached out to a number of people to try and see if there were availabilities for full-time work elsewhere. And there were. I got a couple of offers, but after going through all of the, after kind of living under big media companies for a while, I wanted to balance, whether or not the security of a full-time job with all of the attendant benefits like health insurance versus kind of the freedom to create the stuff that I want and, keep more of the stuff that I make, right? Whether or not that balance was good. And I thought hey, actually on the podcast, James and I have full creative control. I would say probably one of the top 3 reasons that we haven't signed on to a podcast network or have joined any of the many, many offers that we get to put ads, along with everyone tells us not to put ads in there. That's a pretty strong reason. I was thinking about that and how much fun I have on this podcast because some weeks it's man, this is the only kind of work-related thing that I'm looking forward to. Because I could just talk about whatever I want. Obviously, with some level of restriction, we don't want to get out of the iTunes explicit rating, which we do with a modicum of success, or do anything that would upset if a boss happened to listen. But it's not. We don't have that kind of control. And I thought about that. I thought about how freeing that is, and so that, along with kind of what the job market looks like, led me to launch my own Substack. And I was thinking about what would I name it? What's the idea? What's the goal here? I talked to a couple of people with Substacks. Matthew Culler will deny it to the ends of the earth, but he was incredibly helpful to me about, ways to launch it, how it works, what I can expect, that kind of thing, as well as a couple of other people with Substacks. And with all of that, I was trying to figure out, hey, what should I call it? And I was well, you know what? The thing that people were really passionate about that I did that they wanted me to bring back was the Wide Left podcast that I did with Ben Natan, where it was we just talked about politics. It very rarely even touched football. And people seem to enjoy that a lot. And so I figured, why not bring kind of all of this together? And I talked to Ben, and I asked hey, Ben, is this okay? And he's are you kidding? That would be awesome. So he was very enthusiastic about me naming my Substack Wide Left. And I want to kind of cover all of the things that encompasses, right? It talks about football a lot. It talks about politics in football a lot. And sometimes, occasionally, it'll just talk about politics if I want to just kind of get something out of the way, right? And sometimes that might mean talking about, the way the players interact with black violence and how that works on the field and off the field. That's a football specific thing, or it can be if I want it to be. But sometimes it might just have to do with sports in general, right? Trans participation in sports is a debate that I've participated in a lot, but I haven't had an area to kind of, put it out there. I've pitched to multiple editors at multiple publications that I kind of want to write about this sort of stuff. And they've shot it down for various reasons, many of which are actually quite reasonable. But here I wouldn't have to worry about that. Or I could just talk about politics. I mean, like, that's something that obviously a lot of people know that I spent a lot of time thinking about, being active in, writing about. People who saw the Wide Left podcast blog posts know that, that I wrote a lot about that. So putting all of that together into kind of one package so that people kind of understand what I'm doing was something that I wanted to do. So I've got, the Substack. It's called Wide Left. The website is wideleftpost.substack.com. And you can subscribe there. There's like free trial, so you can see the paid content beforehand for a little bit. If you just kind of want to see what I'm going to do. And some people have asked me, like, hey, are you just going to write about the NFL in general? Or are you going to focus on the Vikings? Kind of what's the deal there? And the shortest answer is whatever feels right. But in terms of trying to get people to understand what they're purchasing, which I think is a fair question, I'm going to probably try to maybe split it in half, make sure that every week I've got some piece of Vikings content that's interesting specifically to Vikings fans, because there's a difference sometimes between Vikings content that's interesting to a national audience and Vikings content that Vikings fans want. Like, is Ty Chandler going to be running back too? Not a huge question for the national audience, right? And some stuff that's national, which I've already got my first piece out. It's the Colts just named Anthony Richardson their starter, and I don't have a huge opinion on that, but I do have an opinion about the way people talk about rookies being named the starter when they're clearly raw developmentally. And so I spent a lot of time talking about that and the way that we discuss quarterbacks and the way that we discuss rookie quarterbacks and whether or not they should start. So that's the first post that's up there. And later on, I'm going to have a piece of Vikings related material. That doesn't prevent me from writing for other websites. I've got some freelance stuff set up already. So that's going to be coming down the week. And I think it's probably a good idea to have some content for free, so people can just sign up for the newsletter. And that newsletter will include a roundup of all the stuff that I've done this week. That includes the freelance articles, podcast appearances, videos, etc., as well as a significant portion of the articles that I write. So at about 50%, for example, of that Anthony Richardson piece, 50% of it's free, and it's a really long piece. And so I think you'll still get something out of it just from that. But if you want to kind of read the deeper analysis stuff, you can help me out and get past the paywall. So that's the idea. It's terrifying, and having a bunch of people, especially people in the industry, say that they wanted to support this, that they wanted to tell other people about it, that they wanted to share it, was really heartwarming. As you can tell from my initial post, which is just an announcement, I go into kind of some personal details about my life. It's a really difficult time. Kind of a funny story about that. I posted that. I was like, oh man, this is the most difficult time of my life. This is crazy. And then two crazy things happened that day, the day the Substack was released, that have made it like, it's like more difficult, but like now it's comically difficult. I told James all about it, and he's like, that's not real. Yeah, exactly. It's like there's like a limit of like absurdity, and that's where James lives, and I'm like rapidly approaching it, kind of like a calculus curve, right? Like that moment from Mean Girls, there is no limit. Yeah, so like it's been like really awesome to see the really positive feedback on this. And so if you're looking for my written work, and I haven't written anything in the past 2 weeks, well, the reason is because I was let go and I was trying to figure out what was coming next for me. And so that's what this is. It's Wide Left Post. It's, to the degree that one can be independent, it's relatively independent. I'm still dependent on Substack, just like I'm dependent on Twitter, just like I'm dependent on Stripe, but it's relatively independent, and I don't have to worry about, making sure that I maintain my access by certain standards, making sure that I adhere to company policies that I thought made sense for them, but not for me. And making sure that I can be as authentic as I possibly can, because I found that that's what people seem to enjoy the most, and it's the stuff that I enjoy the most. So this was supposed to be a short pitch. It's not. This is turning out to be probably a labor of love, and so I'm going to be posting there for the foreseeable future, and I hope people come along.
So there's other ways to help support us as well. You can go over to patreon.com/NorseCode and join up there for bonus episodes, which we will have one very shortly, and access to the bonus material, and access the bonus material and over to the Discord. And there is actually a special Hell League just for Patreon people. So if you want extra chance of getting it, you can go there. We'll talk about the Hell League in a second, but special thank you on Patreon over to Adam Brady, Mitchell Ronald, M. Ray, and Timothy Watts. Thank you guys so much for signing up on Patreon. Really do appreciate it. We had a great 10th anniversary episode, especially with Dusty's appearance at the very end. That was really cool. So thank you to everyone that listened, and thank you to everyone who helped contribute, including Justice. And we had Justice, we had Luke, we had Dusty, we had Eric. Eric had a really great one about the wine. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for checking it out. Also, if you'd like to support us, you can head over to paypal.me/NorseCode as well. It's a one-time donation. You can also go to norsecode.threadless.com, where we have the new 10-year anniversary merch. And I got the shirt today. It looks great. I'm very pleased with it. The baby onesie doesn't look good for a Reef's face. So if you're looking for a Reef's face on the baby onesie, it looks like he's wearing like a hoodie or like a mask. Like a baklava, like the ski mask thing. It doesn't look right.
Yeah, no, it looks like I'm gonna rob a bank.
However, his face on the body pillow in the corner of the image looks perfect. It could not have been planned better. So the baby onesie
I would argue this is the worst planning. That's
the baby onesie that has the version of a reef.
So if you want, it's immaculate.
If
you want like the person on there to look threatening, but the object, and I mean that in multiple senses of the word, to look exactly as the artist unfortunately intended by the inappropriately designed baby onesie.
Yes, that is the best advice we can give you. Also, if you are interested in the Hell League, if you've ever wanted a shot, this is your year. We have a number of we have less people going to or that have submitted for the Hell League this year than ever before. I don't know what's going on, but if you'd like entrance into the Hell League, now is your chance. Boost those numbers. We got some rookie numbers coming in right now. So if you're interested in the Hell League, email me at norsecodepodcast@gmail.com, DM me on Twitter, send me something over on Discord or over on Patreon, and get your message in, and I will add you to the lottery. But if you've ever kind of hemmed and hawed and thought, maybe I won't get it or whatever, or if you haven't gotten it in the past, this is your year, apparently. We haven't had nearly as many entries, so the opportunity to get into the Hell League is right there for you. So check it out. Send me an email. Send me a message. You're good. Also, a special announcement about the Denver game. We are going to be doing the Denver live show. Taping is going to be the 16th of November. Game is the Sunday night game at the moment over in Denver, November 19th. So if you find yourself in the Denver area or have convinced your wife somehow that this is a good idea, we will be doing it officially on the 16th. Let's get into the episode itself because there is a preseason game to recap. As briefly as we can, it was the week 1 preseason game. The Seahawks beat the Vikings. This was a fairly close encounter, but it wasn't anything special. It was, again, the first preseason game. The thing that we can take away from this is that we apparently have a number of good receivers.
It seems like it. I mean, it kind of depends.
But what else do we have?
Right. I was pretty happy with the Vikings' performance. I mean, like when the backups went in, the Vikings kind of got steamrolled a little bit, and I kind of don't care about that. The team level performances or whatever, right? Like if the Vikings had come out with a different number of points in the first half when the primary backups were in, it wouldn't have bothered me if we had seen the same level of performances from these players. I think if you take a look at so for example, right, I thought the receivers looked excellent. I think we did see a moment like Jordan Addison officially finished with 1 reception, but everyone knows that he had, another reception that had been overturned that in the regular season would have been counted as a catch. It was spectacular. It ruled. There's a viral tweet going around within like half an hour of the catch, so like during the game, of the exact same camera angle, nearly the exact same pose of Chris Carter doing the same thing at the sideline. It ruled. It was a ton of fun to watch. And overall, I mean, he just did a good job. If you take a look at the all-22, he ran like 8 routes. There wasn't a ton of film to break down on the first round pick, and it's not a bad thing. But on those 8 routes, I thought that he looked very good. He found a capacity to get open. Level of competition, of course, you got to take that into account. But I thought it was really good. I think that we saw like some pretty good stuff out of Jalen Reagor. Obviously, he led the team in receiving, 55 yards. A lot of that comes against backups. But aside from the statistical stuff, I think that the fact that he seemed a little bit more in control, like as a route runner, I thought was good. But that wasn't really the question that a lot of people had about Reagor. It was whether or not he had, a command of the offense from a receiver's perspective that would allow him to be an actual asset. Because the Vikings seemed to primarily use him in situations where he couldn't like screw up from a decision-making standpoint, like after, Kirk threw the pick in his direction when he, should have sat and instead he moved. The Vikings used him in very managed situations, like areas where he just doesn't have a route decision, primarily near the goal line when he was like a motion threat, stuff where that's not really the concern. Clearly the Vikings like his athleticism and hope that there could be more. And from that context, obviously the Vikings aren't running their full to the complicated offense, especially with like Nick Mullins in there. But he did stuff like he corrected other receivers, right? Which is, that's huge to me, right? Like it tells you that there's at least some command of what's being demanded, not just of him, but of every receiver on that play. So, even just something as simple as modifying an alignment or providing some advice afterwards, that's, I think, encouraging. It doesn't mean that he's going to make the roster or anything like that, but that's a good sign, right? I think that probably the receiver that did the most to improve his odds of making the roster, Brandon Powell, I thought he looked astounding. He was doing it. Kevin O'Connell said he's made an impact every day in camp. And if you listen to some of the people covering camp, that's true. I know the person focusing on it most was like Luke Braun, but everyone who's been covering campus had something positive to say about Brandon Powell. And I think that, he's done a pretty good job of that. And Powell and Reagor are competing for the same job, not just receiver, but potentially punt returner. And so that, I think, that competition is exciting because both players are playing pretty well, at least coming out of that preseason game. So I think that that's pretty meaningful. We saw like a smidgen of N'Keal Harry, which was good. Like I thought that was good to see. The backup offensive lineman got rolled, whatever. I thought like, so Oli Udoh played really poorly, and that is a concern because he seems to be slated to be the primary backup at tackle. I suspect that in actuality he wouldn't be. And I'll explain that in a second. That's not like a surprise or anything like that. But I mean, he didn't look good. And he didn't look good against backups specifically. And so even though he is now back to playing his original intended position, his position of best fit, which is right tackle, instead of guard, it just doesn't look good. Ed Ingram played a little bit despite being a starter. And there's 1 or 2 snaps where he looked completely lost. And you kind of wonder about that. I know that Luke and some other people, I think Alec Lewis, for example, mentioned that seems to be a communication thing, that maybe this is on the guard. I personally don't think so. I haven't looked into it as deeply as either of them, so certainly I could be wrong about that. I think that's like genuinely they're just a concern there. But on the reps where he was on, which is almost all of the reps, he looked a lot better. Great. Luke mentioned that he had better patience in terms of shooting his hands. I thought that he had more functional strength, like he's always had strength, but, that strength appeared on the field in a way that was really useful. Seemed to understand his assignments for the most part, aside from those snaps, and played really, really well within those contexts. So that was pretty nice to see. And then Blake Brandel, in incredible moments at times. I thought overall he played well at left guard. The stunt pickup that he had, was astounding. That's like a pretty, like what he needed to do to accomplish what he did required a fairly rare level of athleticism from a guard. And I think he's probably going to be the primary backup tackle, despite the fact that he's also a primary backup guard, I would think that he would play tackle in a situation where somebody gets hurt instead of Oli Udoh. And I'm comfortable with that. So that's something to keep in mind on the offense. I don't think there's much more to say. Jaren Hall didn't look good the first couple of snaps. That first drive, he at least looked calm. The Vikings very clearly gave him a very small sliver of things to do and put him in comfortable situations. A lot of rollouts, just like at BYU, managed reads, just like at BYU. And then after that first drive, it kind of fell apart. Like he no longer looked calm. He looked really panicky, willing to bail on clean pockets, a little bit late on messy pockets, relying on his athleticism a bit too much instead of kind of playing quarterback in a way that is more holistic. And I don't think that that's anything concerning, but that's there. I know Nick Mullins had like a pretty good PFF grade. I didn't think that he played all that well. But he's a backup, so I'm not too concerned about it. I don't think there's anyone else on offense. Maybe Abram Smith played pretty well. Dwayne McBride was primarily a kick returner, and he did like extremely poorly at that. I wouldn't have expected him to do well at that job, so I was kind of surprised he was even given it. But he also made some mistakes as a running back, and I don't just mean his statistics were poor, which they were, but individually his performance, it wasn't there for whatever reason. So the steam is kind of evaporating on him. Plus there's some like transactional stuff that we'll get to later on that goes into it. On defense, Jalen Williams had a pick. He looked good. Jawan Williams played a lot more snaps than I would have expected. I thought he looked really good. The dime package that we saw a lot, or not just dime, but more the big nickel package that we saw a lot, that seems like it's going to be a staple, where there's 3 safeties on the field instead of 3 corners in your 5 defensive back set. That's cool. I'm kind of excited about kind of what that will end up looking like. Caleb Evans took, let's say 10 passing snaps, something like that. I thought he looked pretty good. Ivan Pace was probably the star of the defense. I know PFF gave him like a 47 or something nuts like that. Let me take a look. 49.4. I get where the grade comes from. 100% I do. I think in the play that most people are talking about, that's not the only play where in coverage there was a concern. I don't put too much on him on that play. Like he's one of the elements that's clearly at fault. For those who are unfamiliar, there's a play where on play action, he clearly bit or took too much depth attacking the running back and had to spin back to get into coverage. And a receiver on an over route caught a pass from whoever the backup Seattle quarterback is. Drew Lock? That was probably Drew Lock. And, it didn't look good. He looked a little bit lost in coverage. I think it looks worse than it is from an assignment coverage standpoint. I think that, primarily he took one step too many going downhill against a run action. And I think that his attempt to get back to his landmark, like given that, was pretty good actually. Like his flipping backwards and moving to his landmark to cover the over and knowing where he needs to be. I thought that was pretty good. Obviously, he didn't accomplish enough. But also like a good chunk of that play is on Lewis Cine as well, in my opinion. But yeah, other than that, oh my God, he was incredible. I mean, he's bringing force, like he's so fast and he brings force as if he's 250 pounds. On multiple plays, he would stun offensive linemen. There's a play where he gets the tackle by pushing a guard. This guy is like 215 pounds, 5'10". He pushes a guard into the running back, and that's how he gets the tackle. That's also a play where Khyiris Tonga becomes Thanos, I guess, and just chokeslams a dude. That ruled. That was my favorite play of the night. That was awesome. Will Reggets tweeted out that clip, so I'll find it. I'll put it in the show notes. But that was awesome. Khyiris Tonga, shout out, also had a pretty good game. Like a good contrast to Ross Blacklock, who had a pretty poor game. But Tonga, I thought, played pretty well, and the Vikings are clearly going to rely on him a lot because the starting 2 tackles might, it's Harrison Phillips and that might be Dean Lowry or it might be Khyiris Tonga, depending on what the offense's starting formation is and what their tendencies are. But like he's clearly going to play a pretty significant role in that defense. And he had some really great moments last year, but he was relatively inconsistent. So seeing at least those moments return is really nice. I think I don't know that there's a ton. Like Andrew Booth clearly made that big mistake that led to a touchdown. That was kind of rough. Mekhi Blackman, he had like 15 or so coverage snaps. Did not look remarkable. Had a good moment here or there. I don't know all of the young defensive linemen aside from Tonga, not great. But you got Harrison Phillips in there and presumably Dean Lowry eventually. Let's see who else. I already talked about Caleb. Oh, Luigi Villain. 4 pressures, looked great. I don't know that he demonstrated that he should take over, presumably Pat Jones's job as the second backup edge rusher, but he's making a case that the Vikings should at least seriously consider it. So that's pretty cool. I thought he looked good, and it's not just like the pressure numbers. He missed a tackle here or there, but he also got a couple of stops in the backfield. So I think it's good. I think that is a sign that the Vikings may have a little bit more depth at edge rusher than you'd think. Let's see, Curtis Weaver did all right. I thought that was kind of more of a run defense kind of guy. And then on special teams, holy crap, Najee Smith, my God. That guy rules at special teams.
What a great stop, or what a great tackle there.
Yeah, there's a great open field breakdown tackle, and it's perfectly breaking down the pre-tackle approach, and then a perfect tackle in terms of form and remarkable patience. Like he knows special teams, right? So he knows that guy has not touched the ball yet, and he knows exactly how much he needs to accelerate or decelerate to get inside that guy's tackle radius, or to get that guy inside his own tackle radius. And as soon as that guy touched the ball, that guy hit the ground. Remarkable stuff. And that was a good moment. But if you just look at how he performed on special teams throughout the day, and I'm not going to pretend I watched the special teams film, which I have.
Only Justice does
yeah,
that.
The Pro Bowl long napper. So I didn't do that, but whenever I saw punt block and he was on punt block, or not punt block, punt, I should just say. Whenever I saw punt and he was on punt, whenever I saw kickoff coverage and he was on kickoff coverage, he was so good. He was the first gunner down the field, like real Laquan Treadwell stuff. Sorry.
Boy,
the Vikings' history of first-round receivers being just ace at punt gunner. Like Cordero Patterson was incredible at it, which
oh god, yeah.
Which it's like a kind of a technical thing, and like Cordero Patterson being good at that kind of a technical thing is its own wonder. But
he had a couple of just phenomenal punt gunning moments where you sat there and went, holy, that's him.
Yeah,
good on him, man. Good on him.
So yeah,
I forgot who 84 was.
Yeah, right. And this dude is good. Like Marcus Sherrill's punt gunner good. Like that. I'm excited. So we'll see. The way Matt Daniels talked about him afterwards made it seem like this dude is 100% making the roster. And maybe that's just the way that Daniels talks, likes to pump players up, gets uncomfortably enthusiastic about them at times. Famously. But the way he talked about it, he's like, this dude was born to play special teams. He lives and breathes special teams. Was I think the quote was he breathes special teams. And it's he's been doing it forever. He's an expert at it. He knows exactly what he's doing, which is a crazy thing to say about an undrafted rookie, right? It's wild to say about a rookie, but if you draft a guy in the first round and he's a persistent special teams contributor, you could probably say this guy loves special teams, because that's not why they drafted him. And so, yeah, okay, fine. But they were just this guy might be the god of special teams type stuff. And then Kevin O'Connell was yeah, it reminds me of Matthew Slater, who, if Pro Bowls are anything to go by, is the greatest special teamer of all time. I think that he's probably made a couple of Pro Bowls based on reputation alone. But I don't want to undercut this guy being one of the best special teamers, like Steve Tasker type stuff, right? And Kevin O'Connell, and O'Connell did not make a direct comparison to Slater. Let me be clear here. He was Matthew Slater-esque speed. But there's a lot of players who you can compare speed-wise. There's a lot of fast, famous players in the NFL, right? So if he was Kene Nwangwu type speed. You'd be like, oh, okay, that's a reference to somebody on the team. He's like the fastest or second fastest guy on the team. I get it, right? Or if he was like Tyreek Hill kind of speed, you'd be like, oh, this dude's insanely fast, fantastic. Or, something like, there's a lot of fast players in the NFL, right? And he went with Matthew Slater's speed. And it's just like not a guy known for his speed. Obviously, the guy is fast. He's an incredible punt gunner. But like, that's like not a thing that you like. When you think of like fast NFL players, you're like Chris Johnson, Tyreek Hill, Mike Wallace, right? Like, Torrey Smith.
Deshaun Jackson for a season.
Right. And so, you'd be like, okay, I get where you're going there. That dude was really fast. I see the vision. But he's like Matthew Slater speed. And importantly, Kevin O'Connell and Matthew Slater were in the same draft class to the Patriots. So, kind of knows the guy, right? Kind of. I don't want to, but like, that's interesting. Right? That name at least got brought up in the context of a special teams player. I think that's pretty meaningful. So good on him, man. That rules. He's the new guy. There's always a guy in camp where you're like, oh man, everyone's really excited about this guy that has like maybe a 20% chance to make the roster. This is that guy.
It's the Mr. Mankato thing.
Yeah. And you know what? It would rule if Mr. Mankato went to a special teamer. Pure special teamer, right? And I don't mean specialist, pure special teamer. That would be awesome. Like CJ Ham's a special teamer, doesn't count. He starts at fullback. But a guy who's just like, yeah, that guy guns punts. Unless did Chisena win? I hope he didn't, because he wasn't even good at special teams. He was the idea of good, right?
People wanted it more than he earned it for.
Right. They were like, I see how he could be good, right? And with this Najee Smith guy, the way they're talking about it and the way that he played in the game, and hopefully we'll see him just ball out in future games so we can actually have something meaningful to talk. Like if he does it for all 3 preseason games, like that's probably a thing that he does, right? But like the way they talk about him, at least, it's just like, oh my God, like Dan Chisena. Yeah, you can see how he could be really good at special teams. Najee Smith, this dude rules. He breathes special teams, which, okay. Someone's gotta. How are special teams coordinators born? That's how, I guess. So, yeah, that's exciting. I spent more time talking about him than I did Jordan Addison. That rules. I love the preseason.
Oh, we can, that was the one shot. A couple shining moments on special teams, but you have the muff punt at the end of the end of the fourth too, and you sit there going, "Yeah, that there's definitely some room for improvement."
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. Which Sam and I argued about the muff punt, whether or not it should count as a fumble in the Minnesota Football Party preseason fantasy league, and it was funny because the fumble is a negative, right? And it was for a player that Sam had rostered. And Sam was arguing it should count as a fumble, and I was arguing that it shouldn't. I was trying to give Sam 2 points, right? Which is, how competitive I am. This is nuts, but I was just like, on principle, a muffed punt is not a fumble because he never possessed it. And Sam was like, in the box score, it's a fumble.
You went with the Futurama thing that we've referenced a million times. You just wanted to be technically correct.
That's
the best kind of
that's
correct.
Important to us, the show.
Yes, to us personally. No one else. If I'm going to be angry, I want to be accurate. Yeah,
right, exactly.
So one thing I do want to mention before we kind of take off of this, and it was the first preseason game. We're not going to go super in depth. There's literally no reason to unless we're filling time. There's no reason to go like blow by blow on it. But Lewis Cine was out there, and his first game since the injury in London against the Saints. How's he looking?
Before the game on the football party, Luke and I both were like, he's probably going to put some plays out there where you're just going to be like, he's back. He gets it. He figured it out. Maybe he's not going to start, but like that's an exciting, maybe this first rounder could turn into a guy. And then when you throw on the all 22, you're going to be like, never mind. And that's like exactly what happened, which is like kind of how camp has been going for him too. But like, he was like, nah, like he had some moments where he gets to the right spot, gets absolutely bowled over on a tackle, and that bothers me a little bit less than because that looks awful, right? But he gets there faster than anyone else from way far away, right? Like he wasn't supposed to be there for the tackle. Him making that tackle is a great bonus, and he didn't do it, and it looks bad, so you don't get the bonus. But mostly that is a slightly positive play because he slowed down the guy when that wasn't his job and no one expected it. But on plays where he's not getting to the ball immediately and then subsequently getting blown up, which like his thing was being a hit stick at Georgia. That was kind of surprising. On the plays where that's not happening, he's just like late to react. Like he's either the first guy to react or the last guy to react. And that is a terrifying place to be as a safety, right? Like if that's an edge rusher, you're just like, oh, you're going to get a couple of free sacks from that. Maybe you get crushed in the run game once or twice. That's a positive, right? At safety, it's definitely a negative, right? Like you might get the hit stick in on 3rd and 10 on an 8-yard crosser and you prevent it from getting a first down when it wasn't even your responsibility. That would rule, right? But like most of the time, your job is to prevent mistakes from occurring. And if you're late, that's it. It's a touchdown. And there was just so many moments in the game where he was late to react to the direction of a run, or the fact that it was a run, which is terrifying. Like safety should just know much faster than Lewis Seen did whether or not that play is a run or a pass. Or he was late to react to the fact that a pass was thrown, even though he's looking at the quarterback, or he's late to react to a route combination, which means that his portion of the coverage responsibility wasn't there. And I don't get it because sometimes he just sees it. Like he enters the matrix and he understands all of the math and he knows exactly where everything is going to be at every moment in time. And he shows up at the ball and then he gets run over, but that's not important. And that's so good. But like, why does it only happen like 3 times a game? That's wild. Why is he charging up? Like, I don't get it. So, which is exactly what happened in camp, right? He got this crazy interception in camp, a throw to the flat where he was on like the opposite side of, he was playing like high center fielder. He comes in out of nowhere, right? And I was able to watch the practice footage of it. He comes in out of nowhere. No reason to expect him to be right. And just grabs the pick and you're like, holy crap, where did he come from? What's happening? What if he was wrong? And the thing is, when he does that, it's not like he's guessing. I don't think he's ever been wrong when he's been super fast. But he just doesn't do it very often. And when you watch some of his other camp reps, it's just like, he's late all the time. So I don't know, but that's what happened in the preseason game.
So there is another preseason game. It's happening this weekend. It's the second preseason game happening Saturday against the Titans in Minnesota. Likely we're going to see a couple of starters. I don't know that we're necessarily going to see Justin Jefferson, but Kirk for a series, you would imagine?
No, I don't think we're going to see Kirk or anything like that. Like Kevin O'Connell's been pretty open about using the joint practices as a means of getting the starters ready. We didn't see starters at all in the last preseason, and we don't see it for the Rams. So I don't think we're going to see Kirk for a series or Justin for a series or anything like that. It seems like the joint practices just kind of fulfill that role. I'd love to be wrong because I want to see these guys in the preseason, but It seems like it didn't happen.
Yep, not much going on. It's just a bunch of guys trying to make the roster, which is fun, but it's, it doesn't involve the high price items here. But there has been some camp stuff to talk about. There hasn't been a lot of camp because there hasn't been a lot of camp, which is an odd sentence to say, but they've been canceling practices and stuff because of weather and all of that. So take me through training camp.
Yeah. So for the most part, there's not like a ton of highlights or performances to go over. Like you said, one of the practices was canceled due to weather. There have been 2 other days where they've either been travel days or rest days. When most of you are hearing it, it's going to be the first joint practice with the Titans. That starts tomorrow as of this recording. And so that's going to be exciting. There's going to be a ton of reporting about it. But there's a rest day before that and a canceled practice before that. But what we have been able to get from practices is mostly like injury updates, some kind of stock up, stock down type things. So TJ Hawkinson shared, for example, that he'd been dealing with an ear infection, that ear infection had been impacting his balance or I guess he used the words equilibrium, but that's your balance is essentially one of many senses that you have, and one of the many factors involved in your balance is fluid in your ear. So an ear infection does have a huge impact on that. So he's just kind of dealing with that. Sounds like it's not a huge deal. Brian Asamoah was held out of the night practice before the preseason, did not participate in the preseason game, which if he hadn't participated, it wouldn't have been a huge surprise because he's expected to start. But that he was described as banged up, he was going to get minimal work in the preseason game, according to O'Connell, but he just felt a little bit of discomfort. They decided not to push it. So it sounds like that was something that they were going to do because he just doesn't have a ton of experience, which I would have been in favor of. Kene Nwangwu has been missing from practice. Ty Chandler's been the running back 2 in those situations for about a week now, and O'Connell described him also as a little bit banged up, but he's just working through the last bit of discomfort. So he used the word discomfort again. So, which I think is a specific word that he wants to use to not cause alarm, but it also suggests that these injuries are probably pretty quick to resolve themselves. Jalen Naylor, that one seems slightly more concerning. O'Connell said it's been a little bit tricky. It's one of those things, lower leg things, we're on initial diagnosis versus what it actually is. The most important thing is we want him to be healthy. So maybe they initially had an understanding what the lower leg injury was, and as the recovery process kind of proceeded, it was something a little bit different, and that has caused maybe not a setback, but has changed the timeline. So that one is kind of interesting. It's one worth monitoring. When they did have practice and walkthrough, Garrett Mogg, wide receiver, wasn't there. Lucky Jackson, wide receiver, wasn't there. Jaquelin Roy, defensive tackle, wasn't there. Jonathan Bullard, defensive tackle, wasn't there. But you got Tristan Jackson back from injury, so that's nice. And obviously Brian O'Neill back, that rules. So that's kind of the injury-related news. Again, not really any performance-related news from training camp. We're going to get a lot of stuff in the next couple of days against the Titans. That should be more enlightening.
So there have been a couple of signings and visits as well to Minnesota, including, of all things, Kareem Hunt came out for a little visit. Yeah,
Kareem Hunt and Mike Davis, both running backs. Kareem Hunt did not have a remarkable year last year. His touch share went down as well, which is interesting because the Browns are not shy about giving him the ball, or they weren't historically. Maybe it's because he demanded a trade. That could be it. And so maybe they just didn't want to give him the ball that much. But it very much seemed like this might be performance related. They gave the ball to Nick Chubb a lot, as they always do, but then they spread the ball around to like D'Ernest Johnson and the other running backs. So when he was on the field, when he was getting the ball, whether it was as a runner or as a catcher, he just wasn't as effective as he was in previous years. So that's something to keep in mind. He was a starting quality back on perhaps the best backfield, the running back rooms in the NFL. If not the best one, singular. And now it may no longer be the case. He was really good for Kansas City. They've struggled to replace him. Obviously, that video of him kicking a woman in a hotel did him no favors. But, that's just a thing that you deal with in the NFL. And it's no longer a reputational risk for someone like the Vikings to sign him. And so the fact that they didn't is interesting, but the fact that they hosted 2 running backs, again, Mike Davis, not as explosive as Kareem Hunt, but a very similar profile otherwise. Great between the tackles, maybe not as good outside of the tackles. He doesn't have a ton of speed, but surprisingly good pass catcher, really good pass catching compliment that, maybe is not going to get you a 20-yard reception, but could convert a first down. And the biggest thighs, Mike Turner-esque stuff. But I think bringing in 2 running backs is super intriguing. Like either, right, the Kene Nwangwu injury is something that they're pretty concerned about, which they did not transmit when they talked about it. Again, pushing through that last little bit of discomfort. Or they don't love what opportunities they have with Alexander Madison. Or maybe, third thing, DeWayne McBride is just not the back that they thought he was going to be, and they want to have another back. So I don't know what that's about. Maybe they just want a bigger room. But that's, I don't know, curious about that. So there's that. They did sign 2 guys, Chima Okorafor and Tanner Vallejo. Tanner Vallejo has been, again, talk about special teams forever, has been a core special teamer. I think he was drafted, like the 6th round or something by the Cardinals. And he has just been playing 300 plus special team snaps every single year, which, given how few special team snaps there are available every year, it's not like, a guy who plays 1,000 snaps on offense or defense. It's, 300 is quite a bit. So, super special teamer, super comfortable and knowledgeable about special teams, pretty decent at it from what I understand. And he must be, if a bunch of teams sign him and decide to play him on special teams a lot, understands his responsibilities, has a pretty decent athletic profile. When he plays linebacker, tends to miss tackles. So that's not great, but that's not really his job. The Vikings may not have a special team specific linebacker. And if they've got a couple of teamers, people like Najee Smith, people like Tanner Vallejo, then that can really significantly improve the quality of your overall special teams unit. So I think that's kind of the goal there. It's not like they're like, man, Troy Dye is just so bad, we're bringing in a guy. That's not it. I think that they just didn't find high enough quality special teams performances from the linebackers, or William Kwenkwu was supposed to be that guy, but then he got waived injured, which I believe he played like 3 snaps in that preseason game. And so probably that has something to do with it. They also brought in Chimakorafor. This guy, didn't know much about him. He wasn't on the consensus board. So I read about him. I think Will Regitz wrote a little bit about him that was interesting, but he played for 6 different schools over 5 years and 2 different sports. He started out playing basketball at a junior college, not a junior college, a Cal Poly Pomona, I think, which maybe that's a community college, but probably not. It's a Cal Poly school. And then he transfers to a community college, maybe Riverside, and plays football there, transfers to another community college, plays football there, goes to Pittsburgh State, plays football there, and then goes to Pittsburgh State, Kansas. That's the school that John Brown is from. But not the famous historical John Brown, the wide receiver John Brown, who also has an association with Kansas. And then went to NAIA school Benedictine, and was already on the Eagles, and they waived him, and the Vikings added him, and they cut Jackie Chen, an all-name superstar, but evidently not that great at football. I don't know. This guy has not played a ton of football. I don't know what he looks like or what his testing numbers are. And the Eagles cut him. The Eagles have a super deep offensive line room, but they cut him before cut down day. So this guy must be all potential or something like that. He must have long arms and run a fast 40, but that's kind of my impression. I don't know anything about him. I don't even know if he's related to Chukwuma Okorafor, the Pittsburgh Steelers tackle from Western Michigan. I'm going to guess no. Otherwise, Will probably would have mentioned it in his story, but that's what I got. Not a ton of, no noise on Dalton Risner. They let Kareem Hunt visit another team. They're not aggressive about signing these veterans that people are pretty excited about. So we'll see.
Well, let's get into the mailbag. We got some good stuff in the mailbag. I say more toward the end, but we got some good stuff in the mailbag here. Cody asks, for Arif's wide receiver 5'6" corner, despite having similar skill sets, could you see a world where Brandon Powell and Jalen Reagor coexist on the 53-man roster? Does keeping redundant skill sets on the margins make sense, or does their skill set redundancy not matter?
So for a while, the Vikings were very committed to engaging in this idea of skill set mirroring, of having a starter with a particular skill set and a role, and then a backup with the same skill set, which was very hard when they had Cordell Patterson on the roster. Honestly, who, right? That's not a pretty rare set of skills. But that was something that they seemingly wanted to do, at least bring into camp. That's not who ended up making the 53-man roster, but certainly in camp, you saw these prototypes follow some very specific roles. That stopped after, and that was across a number of positions. You had it at tight end, which it's a little bit easier if you've got an all-rounder. It's a little more difficult to find, but a little bit easier to define, I guess. But the cornerbacks, same deal, safety, same deal. So it was across the roster, but it was most obvious at a position that has a greater skill set diversity, like receiver. And after the Vikings started just regularly starting, Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, they were just like, yeah, let's add good receivers. I don't know, just if they're good, that's fine. And so that seems to be kind of closer to what most teams are doing. What the Vikings did last year, they just wanted to add the highest quality receivers that they had available to them, regardless of whether or not you could fit them in the same role if a starter went down. And, obviously there's a good argument for that in that it gives you a wider access to a number of plays. You can use your backups more regularly. And it's not as if your backups can't perform a number of roles if your starter goes down. You just have to change your playbook. But, that's some competing schools of thought. The dominant one right now is just to find as many high quality players and sacrifice your playbook flexibility in the process. Here, I don't think the skill set thing matters. They have a similar skill set. And for the purposes of jobs, they're competing for the punt returner job. And if one of them doesn't get it, the value that they provide to the team is significantly smaller. But in terms of the wide receiver role, the skill sets that they have, the fact that they mirror each other, is not that significant. If they think that both of them are capable receivers, right, that should be on a roster, that are effective backups, that would compete as wide receiver 4 in a number of teams, despite being wide receivers 5 and 6, they're both going to be on the roster, right? But I think that, so again, that's ignoring the punt return thing, one of which adds tremendous value to whoever wins it. So I don't think that matters. I would also argue that their skill sets are a little bit different because you're more likely to send Jalen Reagor deep downfield than you are Brandon Powell, who you kind of want to do a lot more underneath stuff with. But yeah, that I think it doesn't, especially for these backups where it's okay, you've got a backup like the Jalen Naylor comp that I used was Andre Roberts, right? Basically the 4th receiver for Washington, was the 4th receiver of the Vikings the year that they had him, was just a deep threat, but wasn't going to be consistently good enough. And maybe that's kind of what Jalen Reagor was supposed to be last year and occasionally was used as last year. And if you've got two of those guys, you're not going to find a place where you can be hey, we'll run the special Jalen Reagor play or run the special Brandon Powell play. They're doing the same thing. So you can't add a special play in there. But I think, it's nice to have that. It's good to have a guy where you can just be look, we need somebody who's just going to kill it on a sweep. We just need somebody who's going to do that. And we've got one guy on the roster that does that. So we're going to design a play for that. And that's fine. But I think if you have two guys, you might lose hey, the Vikings don't have a big, right? They don't have a receiver that's just going to win a contested catch against a 6'2" corner, right? They tried to get one, in Garrett Mogg, as an undrafted. Obviously, they didn't spend all that many resources on it. But, if they had one that was competing for a spot, I don't think the fact that they've got different skill sets would determine, whether or not this hypothetical guy would beat out Brandon Powell if Jalen Reagor made the roster. So no, I don't think it matters that much, but for some teams it does.
Also, he asks, for Arif's defamation and threats corner, a fun corner we haven't spent nearly enough time in.
I don't know about that.
Now that Arif no longer has to worry about what his employer will think about his tweets or public opinions, should we expect the Luke Braun slander to get even more extreme, and is Luke in trouble?
So I want to be clear that any accusations levied at me about defamatory actions or threatening behavior are just that. They're accusations. At best, they're alleged. So no, because I would maintain that I haven't done any of that. Slander, for example, legally would imply something that wasn't true. And everything I've said about Luke, the monster, is true. So I wouldn't say that. Also, I have never once been told by an employer to tone it down with regards to Luke. I don't know what that's about. Some of them have notifications turned on for my tweets, and they see this thing that I guess some of you have interpreted as threatening behavior. I don't know what that's about. But they see these tweets of me telling Luke that I better be careful at night. To totally, he's a colleague. I want him to be safe, right? Hey, Luke, you live at this address and you leave to go get food every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Be careful. They see that tweet, right? And they've not talked to me once about it. So that hasn't really modulated my behavior in that regard. So I wouldn't expect any of however you want to characterize my behavior towards Luke. I wouldn't expect any of that to change because it's important for me to tell the truth. And the truth is that, Luke's time on this earth could potentially be limited. Who's to say? Kyle Shanahan said we don't even know if we're going to be here tomorrow.
Kyle Shanahan did say that famously.
Yeah. Something that you should take note of, Luke.
What was really fun was, all the references to, alleged and all of this. You getting him in a headlock the other night was fantastic. I did think, especially the way the picture was shot, like that was fantastic.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, again, purely self-defense. A static moment in time won't necessarily capture that. But if you want to see it, join the Discord. The only way to join the Discord is to join the Patreon.
Yes.
Unless, did you tweet it out? It was tweeted out, so maybe not. But still.
Yeah, still, it was still join the Patreon. Next question.
But also, we tweeted it out.
Yeah. But I'm trying to embrace your new, owning the means of production thing. So, yeah. Bob the Bolsheriv asks, Andrew Booth got absolutely toasted against the Seahawks when Jake Bobo, of all receivers, made him turn completely the wrong way. Is it time to shift from concern to let's pretend he was a Spielman pick?
Okay, that's funny. Yeah, I remember when Rick Spielman drafted Andrew Booth. What was he thinking? So I'll say this. Bobo was one of the highest rated undrafted players. So if you said before the draft, Jake Bobo of all guys, tore him up, I don't know. I wouldn't have been like that. But he was undrafted, so fair enough. Andrew Booth is like a second-round pick. So, even if he was a sixth-round guy, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, he's had his share of highlights in camp. I'll give Andrew Booth that. But there's no chance he's even cornerback 4. Not even remotely, right? He's, at best, cornerback 5. Mekhi Blackman's ahead of him. Jawan Williams is ahead of him. Caleb Evans is ahead of him. Obviously, Byron Murphy's ahead of him. That's his ceiling right now. And that is a low ceiling, right? I don't think he has a high floor either. So it is possible it might be the end of Andrew Booth time here in Minnesota. It's possible. If I'm going to make a 53-man roster, I'm looking at this guy that is breathing special teams, and I'm like, do we really need 6 corners? That's what I'm thinking about. So, yeah, man, Bobo roasted this dude.
Next question is from Anya Taylor-Joy, who asks, for a Reefs jersey number corner, what kind of career would Justin Jefferson need to have to be the greatest number 18 in NFL history?
So I was like, okay, obviously there's a reference to Peyton Manning, but I was like, what other guys wore number 18? So I looked it up. Charlie Joyner was one of them, so that's relevant. There's a couple of others, but Charlie Joyner, Peyton Manning came up the most often when you look at that. AJ Green, wore it. I guess Roman Gabriel wore 18, and so did Emmett Thomas. But obviously the competition here is Peyton Manning, who is mostly the greatest quarterback of all time. Obviously, it depends on kind of how you view that question. But when you look at production versus his peers, it's not close. Tom Brady winning a lot, that definitely helps. If you look at points generated on offense and take out points generated by the defense, important for a Patriots team that is consistently good and often great defenses. Peyton Manning substantially outpaces Brady. Brady's drop-off in play in the playoffs is a little bit lower than Peyton Manning's, but it is kind of overstated the way that Peyton Manning tends to struggle in the playoffs. His defenses tend to struggle more. So Peyton Manning, potentially the greatest quarterback of all time, until Patrick Mahomes plays, another year and a half, if we're being honest. And then, take the crown, I guess. But, so how much better does Justin Jefferson need to be? He just needs to play at this level for longer, which sounds simple, but obviously is not. But, the thing is, Jefferson has had the best first 3 seasons in the history of the NFL at receiver. Period. Even if, you say he doesn't have the Jerry Rice longevity, which I think is both overrated and underrated. Like, there's a lot of people that are just like, Jerry Rice, obviously he's a great receiver. Look at all these all pros. Obviously he was the best receiver in the NFL when he was playing for most of his career. But a lot of the way that we understand him is because he played for so long that he just stacked all these 1,000-yard seasons on top of each other, which, first of all, are you listening to yourself? Just stacked 1,000 yards. Like, it's like easy to just stack 1,000-yard seasons. Like, that's crazy. But also, if you like split his career in half, Jerry Rice, the 30 only after the age of 30. If Jerry Rice had a career of just his age 30 seasons and past, would have been the third best receiver of all time. And then you get the time in his prime. Like, that's crazy. Like, I'm still a Randy Moss guy, but that's crazy. So you don't have to be the best receiver in the history of the NFL to be better than Peyton Manning. You could just be second best. But, like, that's crazy. Like, that is like a huge stage. So, like, let's say he doesn't have the longevity of Jerry Rice. A fair assumption, I think. But, like, if he plays at about this, like, he doesn't have to get 1,800 yards a year, right? Like, that's a lot. That's asking quite a bit. If he, like, only gets 1,500, which there was a year he didn't get 1,500. I think that he's at 2 years. Like, he went 1,400, 1,600, 1,800. So I guess he's on track for 2,000, if that's how math works. But, like, let's say he only, quote unquote, gets 1,500 yards for, like, the next 5 years. That in just those 5 years, those 8 years, that is, like, one of the greatest receiver careers in the history of the NFL. Even after you adjust for competition, you adjust for the passing game, you adjust for, like, yards per route run, you adjust for passing volume, any adjustment, like, that's insano stuff. That's, like, clearly past, like, the Andre Reeds and the Art Monks and all of that, right? Like, that's past Chris Carter type stuff. Like, that's nutso stuff. That's where he's at on an 8-year career. So if he plays for, like, 12 years, you could make the case that he's the greatest number 18 in the history of the NFL. If he plays at that level, and obviously we never know how injury works out, especially in a long enough time span, like 10, 12 years. But, like, it's kind of difficult to, like, really put Justin Jefferson into context because, like, right, like, we saw Randy Moss have the greatest rookie season at receiver ever. And then he turned in, like, a historic, insane career with some of the best highlights we've ever seen. And then this dude, like, that's nuts. So that's all I got to say. That's crazy. What an interesting question. And that wasn't a crazy question. So
yeah, as it turns out,
props.
that's it. There could be some fun, like, moments in there to get to the point. So
yeah.
And wide receivers aren't like quarterbacks where that's how you judge the greatest. Like, it doesn't work like that.
Right, yeah, like, he doesn't need the rest of his team to get their get their stuff together to win a Super Bowl, right? Like, Randy Moss, a lot of people's wide receiver one never got a ring, right?
Nope, played,
that's just not how the position
never got
works.
It.
Yeah.
Calvin Johnson played on some of the worst Lions teams in the history, and, like, looking at the history of the Lions, some of the worst Lions teams in the history of their whole entire franchise, meaning worst
and
overall.
Subsequently in the NFL. Yeah.
And is regarded as one of the greatest for a reason. Like, he was spectacular. So
also, I do think that, like, one of the most interesting kind of, just as a tangent, one of the most interesting kind of effects of his relatively early retirement is I don't think, like, I don't want to say, like, current generation. I don't want to be like an old man, be like, kids these days.
You got some gray in your beard, accept it.
Yeah, I do, actually, and I think it looks good. But it's not enough for it to, like, really look good.
A weird self-affirmation moment just happened here. I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll insult myself with significant vitriol later on. But like, the thing is that there just hasn't been enough discussion about Calvin Johnson. So it's not like it's like Gen Z's or Gen Alpha's fault or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But like, there just hasn't been a ton of discussion about Calvin Johnson after he has retired. And so I think that they like kind of don't get how crazy good this dude was. It's like, because like, people are like, oh man, I think Antonio Brown was better than Julio, or maybe, oh man, I think Julio was better than Antonio. And I think Julio is probably the best modern receiver that we've seen, or something like that. And it's like, bud, just sit down, man. Like, I get what you're saying, and there's a lot there. Like you're not on the wrong track, but you are wrong, right? Like Calvin was so good. Like he ran routes like a 5'10" slot guy at 6'4". Jesus. like, whoa. Like Moss did that, and that's it. That's our menu of receivers that do that. Done.
What's worth mentioning is that I think he might be viewed a little bit higher in the history of like greatest wide receivers if he didn't get tackled at the one so damn often.
So often.
It's so frustrating as a fantasy owner for him. Oh my God. Nobody got tackled within the 5 more than Calvin Johnson did.
Swear to God. And like the thing is, it wasn't like a skill issue. Like, are you really going to knock a guy for getting a 76-yard pass and not a 77-yard one? Like, it's not like he can't finish. That dude bullied people. It was his job to bully. The only person who ever bullied him was Harrison Smith, which I think even Harrison Smith was surprised by, right? Like, I remember Brandon Marshall being like, that Harrison Smith dude is the only guy. I don't get it. Which, probably that deserves to be part of Harrison Smith's resume. But like, that dude did not get bullied. He just like, and sometimes the rulings at the one were just a ref thing, right? Like, so I like in the pantheon of receivers who get hosed, it's not Dez Bryant at number 1, man. I think it's Calvin.
Well, it would have to be based on how he retired and how the team tried to take his money back. So,
I mean, there's that too. Yeah. Team's not doing enough, so he retires. Team decides you're not doing enough, and so holds back guaranteed money.
Goes to court. Yeah. Still doesn't like the organization. Like,
yeah, right. Well, actually, so because of there was a change in leadership at the organization with like the way the ownership structure works, but also because what's his name, Dan Campbell. Because Dan Campbell rules so hard, like this year, Calvin Johnson's made up with the organization.
Remarkable.
Like that's honestly like given how, and Barry too, like Barry was hanging out with Calvin meeting the draftees coming in, like, which I saw both of them and I was like shocked. And that's how awesome Dan Campbell is. And like that, we just talked about what should go on Harrison Smith's resume. Dan Campbell doesn't have to win a ring for him to be one of the greatest Lions coaches of all time. That's part of the story, man. That's incredible.
Yeah, and he's using that to parlay he just wants a live lion on the sidelines. Not it's not going to go crazy. He just wants a live lion on the sidelines. Like,
it's totally normal to want that.
I mean, I want fire back in the entrance for the Vikings like intro. So like I get it. But that seems less likely to cause problems than having a live lion in the stadium. But, what do I know? Delta BC Dad asks, if all of last year's early picks bust, when do we seriously evaluate Kwesi's contributions? Outside of the draft, how should he be ranked?
Okay, outside of the draft, I think that he deserves, I mean, obviously we only got, the 1 year and a half, I guess now. But outside of the draft, I think that he deserves a significant amount of praise. Trading for TJ Hawkinson was great. Signing Harrison Phillips was great. The way that he's managed this year in terms of the high-cost veterans, from my perspective, I think has been a good process. Having the stones to let go of Dalvin Cook, I thought was smart. The way that he's managed free agency, I think, has been smart. You don't get like some of the splashes, but I mean, like getting Byron Murphy, for example, and we haven't talked about him very much in terms of his camp performances. They're good. Like he looks good in camp, and you know who he's going up against, right? So like that's, I think, significant. We'll see how that kind of plays out. But like the failures on the field seemed more to be related to coaching, like at Donatel, than they do to personnel, even though, Andrew Booth like didn't work out, right? But that's a draft thing. So like I think that he's been pretty good outside of the draft. Now you get into the draft, you've got two elements: how you manage the draft process itself, which I thought Spielman was astounding at. He was so good at managing the draft. Obviously, the last couple of years of picks didn't work out, so selecting players themselves, that wasn't a huge strength. I mean, obviously, he ended up with some really high-level players over the course of his tenure, and I would say that his drafting ability was largely better than his peers. But over the last couple of years, that didn't happen. But managing the draft, figuring out where and when runs would start, figuring out how to trade and when to trade, finding value of players even after runs or in the middle of runs. There were moments where he didn't get it right. Like Ezra Cleveland, when all the guards went gone, it was very clear that he thought there would be some guards, or basically almost set it at a presser. But for the most part, figured out kind of where the running backs would go. And we got Jerick McKinnon in the middle of a running back run, figured out where the cornerbacks would go. Made picks when you thought he would trade down. It just turned out to be the right move because there was a cliff at that position of need for the Vikings. Like, I thought he managed the draft very well. Selecting players is up and down. Kwesi doesn't manage the draft very well. It doesn't seem like he has an understanding of where, at this point at least, those cliffs and troughs of player talent are at positions. Doesn't seem to understand. And you can't know, like I can't know, for example, that Ed Ingram would have been there in the third round. I can't know that. But I think it is highly probable, given not just the off-field stuff, but the talent-specific evaluation that people were not familiar with his background made of him as a fourth rounder, right? Again, can't know that. Maybe a bunch of other teams viewed it differently. When players go higher than you think, you just don't know. When they go lower than you think, every team has made that decision, so you've got some little certainty. But he reaches against the consensus board somewhat consistently. I don't necessarily love that process, but hey, if these players turn out, it doesn't really matter, right? Like, yeah, you're not managing the draft very well, but you got some players that matter. Like, okay, you didn't get Andrew Booth, but you got Caleb Evans. All right, sure. If Brian Asamoah turns out, which he may not, I didn't like him as a pick, right? I don't think that he was a very good draft prospect, but I could be wrong about that based on how the Vikings talk about him. Okay, Ed Ingram doesn't work out, but you got Brian Asamoah. Okay, so your first round pick doesn't work out, but the trades don't seem to, like Christian Watson. Maybe he'll turn out to be good, but obviously I'm going to keep hating on him. Jameson Williams just doesn't seem to be clicking yet. Again, there's so much of his future yet to be written, but at the moment, that's kind of where we are. The way that Dan Campbell talked about him is kind of alarming. The trades don't seem to be catastrophic yet, if at all. But the selections, okay. I would say that this is a positive trajectory. The arrow's pointing up. How he handles the quarterback question next year is going to matter a lot. And it's going to kind of define his tenure. I mean, a lot of people think that Spielman's tenure is defined by his inability to draft a quarterback. And fair or unfair, it's the same standard's going to apply to basically every GM who has multiple opportunities to draft a quarterback high and just doesn't get to, make good on that.
Next question is from Ben, who asks, what's worse coming from training camps? The best shape of his career narratives or the completed passes against air?
So I will say this, most of the time when you get statistics from training camp, Christian Ponder completed 3 of 3 for, whatever, you don't get the yardage, completed 3 of his 3 passes. Almost all the time that's not against air, that it's 11 on 11 or 7 on 7. So we'll say that. That's still worse than best shape of your life. It's still worse because most of the time you have no context for what that drill was. If, for example, it's a third down drill, and this is the example I always go to when I talk about this because this was a very Christian Ponder thing in his final year as a potential starter for the Vikings. He would have a really high completion percentage in training camp and also the NFL, I guess. But in training camp, you reported he was 6 of 7. That's pretty good. And then you realize that was a third down drill, and he converted 2 of 7 third downs. Dope. It's kind of or it's a 2-minute drill, and okay, you're tracking progress in the 2-minute drill, but if he's throwing over the middle of the field, and the clock is running and the player's down, okay, that's the completion doesn't really matter, and it might have hurt, right? You'd rather that he throw it away and take the incompletion, but you're only reporting when you report the box scores anyway, you're only reporting the completion rate. You're not getting yards per attempt. You're not getting really touchdowns, interceptions. Like sometimes you get interceptions. You don't really get a good discussion of touchdowns. And you don't get like whether or not they're accomplishing their goal. And it just paints an incorrect picture, which I think is worse than like best shape of your life. Cause it's just like, yeah, he feels healthy now and he's old. Good. Like, okay.
I mean, what
no one's misinformed here.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to Jack, who asks, in recent years, in favor of a longer season, we've seen the league trade a week of the preseason for an additional regular season week. At surface level, the exchange looks like a week of non-competitive football for games with actual stakes. One thing lost in transition is the opportunity for veterans and those lower on the roster players to showcase their talents. Pairing that with a CBA that greatly benefits rookies to vets, see free agency now versus decades ago, is there anything the NFL has done to tip the scales back in favor of lower profile vets? And if not, what is one or a few changes you would make to balance out this issue?
Yeah, so it seems like there's been nothing. There's been like nothing that helps these, veterans that are kind of the middle of the roster or, bounce around like journeyman type stuff. It very much feels like that. And for the most part, the structures that have changed in the NFL as a result of the CBA and the bargaining process have just been bad for those players. And that's like the net effect of that is still true. But there have been some things that have improved things for them. So an important bit of context, when the NFLPA negotiated a rookie salary cap, right? It made rookies more valuable to teams because now it reduces their cap impact. And the players that they would cut were not the stars, right? And they wouldn't negotiate stars against rookies. It was those kind of middle of the pack, middle class, whatever you want to call them, players in favor of rookies. So instead of a 6-year veteran that's your backup linebacker, now it's a guy in his second year of his rookie contract. And that guy is probably less talented, but now you can afford to pay, your star receiver, and that's worth it. So that's kind of the impact that it has. And there's just a ton of small things that have kind of built up around it, including the market dynamics surrounding running backs, which is also related to the rookie stuff. The additional individual leverage that stars have. Like, I think overall players have lost leverage, but individually some star players have gained it. And because it's a capped system, it comes at the cost of some of these veteran players. But there's been a couple of small things that have helped them. There have been some slight changes, for example, to the minimum salary benefit. So the minimum salary benefit is when you pay a player their minimum salary based on the number of years that they're in the league. So the minimum salary for a player with no accredited, not accrued, those are different in the NFL, but I believe it's accredited years in the NFL, which is dependent on the number of active games that you're there for and stuff like that, is $705,000. So that is the minimum salary you can pay a rookie, basically 0 years in the NFL. In year 4 or year 4 to 6, the minimum you can pay them is $1 million. Now, that doesn't change much about the dynamics. The reason that that's a good thing is because the cap impact of that player is about $600,000. So you can pay a player $1.035 million, and the cap impact is about $600,000. And so you can, quote unquote, get around the cap in terms of the cash that you pay out and get that veteran player onto your roster. And if you think that veteran player is worth more than a rookie, undrafted free agent or 6th round pick or whatever, now you have an incentive to actually pay the veteran instead of that 6th rounder or to invest in a 6th rounder. And so that's the thing. But like, if you're a player that should be making $4 to $6 million, like maybe $7 million, like Dalton Risner or something like that, it's tough. Dalton Risner is competing against Ed Ingram's rookie contract. Like, that's tough. So there's still like a class of players that just doesn't get much out of it. Expanding the practice squad has helped. That, instead of, so during COVID, it was 16, I believe right now it's 14. And 4 of those are just reserved for veterans. And obviously, there's a push and pull here. It kind of hurts because giving that option allows teams to stock the roster with rookies and put the veterans on that practice squad where they could pay them significantly less. But that was a process that was occurring with or without that practice squad. And so now there's some opportunity to compensate them. The primary issue here, more than anything else, is the existence of a salary cap. That does more than any, the only reason that there are all these trade-offs of paying one player hurts this other player is because of cap implications. And so that squeezes out this group of players that now, because of the implementation of the rookie salary cap, which I don't think that's ever going to go away now that it's been implemented, and something I feel bad about advocating for way back, there's just going to be this continuous squeeze on this middle. And I don't think that would happen if you expanded roster limits a little bit without expanding the draft and expanded, or not even expanded the salary cap, just get rid of it. But yeah, there's not much. And then there's improvements in pension and accessibility for pension for those players. But in terms of rostering them, those are the closest we have to improvements.
Next question is from Nolan Kaler, who asks, for North Code, how will Kari Vedvik make the Vikings rue the day they released him?
So he was traded from the Saskatchewan Roughriders to the Hamilton Ticats. I think that's correct. Which, for people unfamiliar, that's Tiger Cats. Tigers famously already cats. But just want to get that out there. So he was drafted in the second round of the CFL Global Player Draft, which is just so CFL. He's like a kicker punter. And it sounds like in the CFL, he's doing both. I remember when he signed with the Vikings and he was kind of struggling, and his agent said something or actually he was cut, and his agent was he's only going to focus on being a kicker. That's it. He's not going to do both. He's only going to focus on being a kicker. Team should sign him to be a kicker. And everyone's yeah, but he could punt, right? And I remember we asked Chris Cluey, hey, this guy can do both. Is that a thing that you can do? Because you're not if you're kicking, you're not on the field that much. How much is it really going to screw you up? And he's it's a muscle memory thing. It's the way that you kick, the mechanics of kicking, it'll really screw you up, and you could injure yourself if you try to kick multiple ways consistently, which is interesting. But I guess he's doing both again. But yeah, I mean, the CFL draft is so, especially the global draft, and not necessarily the Canadian draft, because the Canadian draft makes sense, right? It's just is this guy good enough to play in the NFL? Yes or no. If he is, you drop him 3-4 rounds. If he's not, now you just rank him. That's easy. But the CFL global draft, there's only 3 or so Canadian players in the CFL draft that's draft eligible that has that question mark. But in the global draft, it's all of them, every single player. And so you're just is this guy good enough to play in the NFL? I don't know. And now you're ranking the players, and it's the players at the top, they're probably going to play. So now you got to move them to the middle. And now you got to make a probability analysis whether or not they're going to make an NFL team. So you end up with weird things where the kicker punter goes in the second round. Anyway, probably not. They're probably not going to rue that day. That day is probably going to be fine for them.
Not gonna end up being an issue.
Yeah, it's all right. I hope he wins Special Teams Player of the Year. I hope they have that award. I hope he wins. I hope he wins the inaugural Kari Vedvik Special Teams Player of the Year award. First awarded to Kari Vedvik.
Also, for James's wedding corner, good luck. The thing that exists. I don't have many things set in stone as of yet, but I know that a live band is in the cards. This is your last chance to make a case for a DJ.
Floor is yours, bud.
I mean, look, live bands are great. I had a live band at my wedding, but love how I said that there. However, I also had a DJ as well. So I'm the wrong person to try to advise you here. When I was a DJ, one of the things I tried to do was basically be not just the person who played music, but organizing the room. So when I was doing it, I used to kind of refer to myself as like an out of work wedding planner at times. Like I'm there talking with the photographer to make sure that, hey, we'll be doing the dollar dance here in a moment if you want to make sure to get that, or hey, we'll be throwing the bouquet, just letting you know in like 2 or 3 songs, just letting you know this is going to be happening. And like I did that for a number of things and like tried to make the bride and groom comfortable with like everything that was going on. And if you find a DJ that does that for you, great. That is, in my opinion, well worth the money. However, if it's just a guy who's going to be playing music in the corner and not really talking and eating your food, then you don't need that. You should go with the live band. But if you find somebody who makes it so you don't have anything to worry about once dinner is served, I would absolutely suggest that. But I don't DJ weddings anymore, so you can't get me for it. Although, I mean, if this is presumably going to happen in Canada, I have said that if I'm flown out to a destination wedding, I would in fact DJ the wedding. So if you fly me from Grand Forks to Winnipeg, we can talk. But I feel like that's a bit excessive.
That's how long is that drive? Like 2 hours?
2.5, baby. It depends on the border. But
yeah, no, fair enough. But like, I mean, the hockey team is called the Jets, and I feel like it'd be appropriate.
Yeah, well.
Hey, Arif knows stuff about hockey. Holy crap!
I was about to say Arif knows stuff about Canada, but I suppose specifically hockey. Wow, let's go do the hockey.
As they say.
As they say. Deez asks, since Arif is on the market for a job, which company would he rather work for? Subway, McDonald's, or his local witchcraft tchotchke retailer?
God, Jesus. McDonald's has like pretty good benefits. That's it. Probably that one. I feel like your DIY ethic would really work with the tchotchkes. Okay, and it's probably a pretty relaxed employment atmosphere. But the witch thing, okay. So my roommate like brought home like a bunch of turkey sandwiches, like turkey sandwich rolls or whatever those are. And was like, yeah, have as much as you want. Like he knows, like I had recently gotten let go, and he's like, yeah, so it's like food you don't have to pay for, it rules. And I was like, look, man, I really appreciate it. But it would just be bad for my brand.
I would do. Like if you and I were living together, I'd be like, dude, I don't know what happened, but like work was like, hey, take all these boxed lunches home if you want. Great. And like as you open up each box, you increasingly look more and more like Angry Cat. That's something I would do intentionally. And I would just be sitting in the corner eating my dry turkey sandwich, cackling.
And I was like, it'd be bad for my brand. And he's like, okay, look, Arif, I get it. Which the fact that he said I get it was a lot. Like that's
a whole.
You're doing a lot to meet me halfway on this frankly infuriating point.
That is a whole mood right there.
It's like, look, I'm just going to put them in the fridge. Make sure they don't go bad. And I was like, that's not on me. Like, you know.
In other news, it turns out beggars can in fact be choosers.
Yeah, you know, if they're belligerent enough. So the witchcraft thing, like that's a great
enough.
It's such a great. That just seems like it would be such an ideal environment for me to feel more at home. But the witch thing, from a branding perspective, that'd be tough. I think I'm a McDonald's guy. I think I'm going to ask them to pay back the student loans I don't owe. They have a student loan benefit. There's got to be some way I can work that.
Yeah, I suppose you do that instead of like trying like hell to date the woman who works at the counter. I get it. I do. Let's go to Trill Swaggets, who asks, JJ recently received a gold chain with a Madden 99 rating pendant. Compared to his other necklace, a diamond-encrusted fighter jet, it doesn't seem that extravagant. Can you remember a time when you gave or received a gift that was noticeably worse than something you already owned?
I mean, like that's a feeling I have. It's like pretty strong, but I can't like tie it to any specific memories. Like some of them are just like I do have specific, but they're like boring ones. Like Like I love socks, right? I think that like the first time I tried a pair of premium socks, I was like, oh, this is like a whole deal. That's crazy that I care about this. Um, and my brother gives me socks every so often, and his gifted socks are fantastic. But sometimes, we'd visit, my brother's in-laws, and they didn't know about the sock thing. They just gift socks. That's just a thing they do, and they sucked. The socks sucked. But that's not an interesting story. That's a low stakes. That's a diamond chain, right? Like that's not a good comparison. But it's not like I have like someone gifted me a computer and I had a better like that. That's never happened. So like I know that I've had that feeling pretty strongly, especially when I was a kid, where like, oh, you gave me a Game Boy knockoff that cost you $40. I appreciate it. Takes a lot to pay $40 for a child's present in 1999. That's cool. But I do have a Game Boy and I can't turn this down. But like, or show disappointment because that's insanely rude. A thing that I sometimes understood as a kid. And in that the specific story I'm telling, I did understand, thank God. But I just want to be clear about the 99 chain thing. The reason that rules is it's because it's from Madden. Like that exceeds the fact that it's not a diamond encrusted fighter jet, right? Like, okay, it's quote unquote just a gold chain with just 99 in gold. It doesn't seem as extravagant. And yeah, if you're going to compare the two aesthetically on its face, sure. But like the 99 is so meaningful. It means so much. Like, dude, the dude cried when he learned he got a 99. Like that's huge, right? So it's not really that comparable. I think that that's something that he 100%, and you could wear two gold chains at once. So like, who cares? But like, as Kirk found out, but like, that's something that has so much meaning aside from the aesthetics of the thing that it kind of doesn't matter. And honestly, it is shocking to me given how much Jefferson loves like ornate objects. How in my opinion, the stuff that he's gone after has not seemed tacky or gauche. That diamond encrusted fighter jet rules. It is for some reason not overkill. And I can't, my brain, most of the time it would be, and it's fine. The thing, it must be elegantly designed. It looks great. But I'm afraid that he's going to get close to that at some point. And maybe the 99 will help with that.
So, for whatever reason, during the history of my life, I have seemingly dated or been involved with people who are just not great at like giving gifts. Well, I wasn't going to. Okay. Now, come on. Now that's.
Look, I'm not saying that's your whole dating history. I'm just saying I've heard enough stories that is not an insignificant portion of it.
That's accurate, but at that point, then I have to break out a line that turns into.
You just gotta hope any exes who are listening be like, okay, well, he's not talking about me.
It's not that I have bad taste in women; it's that bad women have taste in me. That's all it is. That's all it is. A sentence I can say. However, like giving gifts has always been like something that doesn't like not something that people can do. I don't believe I'm hard to shop for. I refuse to believe that. You know why I refuse to believe that? Because I drop hints like crazy about, hey, this would be a really cool thing. Hey, I'm always looking for something like this. Hey, this, that. And like, I try to make it as easy as possible. However, sometimes a failure happens along the way and it's just sad. And at one point, I had said repeatedly that I was looking for a new wallet. And like the old one I had was starting to fall apart. I still have this one that's falling apart. It was like, this is something I'd like to have replaced, whatever. And I got a replacement at one point that was somehow the worst wallet in the history of the planet. Like it might as well have either A, been paper, or B, like, it could have just been like made of water. Like it didn't do anything.
Made of water.
Like this was the worst. Like, you could have just given me a handful of water and said, put your money in it. And be like, what? Like it never held anything properly. It like always always found some way of like falling out of my pants, which I thought was peculiar. Like I was like not like a non-stick thing, but it would just like fly out, and like no matter what I did, I was like always like losing. I was like, not only do I hate this thing, but like it's trying to run away. This is crap. I absolutely despise this thing. And shortly thereafter, she and I had split up, and my first thought wasn't like, "Oh, that's too bad." My first thought was, "Oh, good, I can use the other wallet again without like feeling bad about it." Like, yeah, that was a thing. I am not a role model. CJ Oppenhammer asks,
it's Oppenhammer.
Oppenhammer, fine, yes. For Arif's wide left corner, as a person who newly owns their own business and will be investing financial resources into the profitability of said business, how does it feel to be a capitalist? Also, Kenneth Allen asks, for Arif's career changes under capitalism corner, does going independent make Arif a member of the capitalist class now that he wholly owns his own labor, or does being a struggling writer, a la Marx, place him even more firmly in the worker class?
Okay, so this like set off like a part of my brain that was like unreasonably angry. You have to understand, like reading these questions didn't make all of me angry. Like I'm not angry, but part of me is furious. And it's weird, right, to like negotiate that emotional state, because most of me is like, that's really funny. That's a funny set of questions. And like, there's a part of me that's like been a Marxist forever. That's just like, this is bad class analysis. Let's talk about it. And so like it took over for a second. It was like, okay, you got to find out everything about this peculiar class position that you're in, because it's not that. And it's also not like petty bourgeoisie. It's like a whole thing. Okay, so we spent a lot of time before the show on this. And by we, I mean me. I don't know what James was doing. My brain wouldn't allow me to process anything he was saying. Presumably, he was encouraging this whole line of behavior because it's great content.
That's exactly what I was doing, actually.
This is a top tier producer, James Bogoshnik, everybody. But yeah, and so like I was like, okay, I got to find this out, because it's not really petty bourgeoisie, although it contains the material characteristics of this. Sorry, we're getting pretty nerdy about this right now. That's just where we are. And I was like trying to figure out kind of like what area that we're in, because I just need to like get closer to being right, I guess. Like, I can't, like, I'm obviously probably just going to be wrong about this, but it's just an inch closer towards a degree of awareness that you might be kind of in the ballpark of correct, right? Like, that's kind of where I'm trying to go with this. And famously, Marxists are clear and concise and easy to search. That's not true. But I just want to be like clear. There's probably enough people listening to this that
probably one of the most like incorrect things that has ever been said on this show, and we've had Justice on a number of times.
Pretty high bar. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. We have a least valuable podcaster. Like we had, like that's how bad Justice is. And still, yeah. So I looked, and so like, okay, so the reason. So a petty bourgeoisie are essentially small business owners. Often people incorporate, small landowners. And by that, they typically mean farmers, but, more often means landlord, although landlord for a lot of Marxists occupies its own class position. Whole deal, not going to get into it. But essentially like a small business owner that might employ one or two people. But the characteristic of that is not the material fact that they are suddenly a small business owner, because their capacity for agency in society, capitalism, the economy, politics, is as limited as most workers most of the time. But the way that they participate in those politics, in those economies, the way that they motivate or agitate or protest or whatever, is they align themselves with the interests of like capitalists as the bourgeoisie. And that's the critical element of petty bourgeoisie. And so like I knew that wasn't like a really good, as much as we make child labor jokes and cookie jokes, I think one's coming down the pipe too in this mailbag. But like that doesn't like really fit. I know the Bolshevik Revolution disagrees, but that doesn't like really fit. So I'm like trying to figure out like where this goes. And I was like, well, it's not that different from a gig worker, right? Because and there has it's not as if like Marx was like, these are the classes, and all the Marxists were like, yes, God, like you're correct, King, slay. No, I mean they've continued to establish like additional class analysis, and the emergence of the private managerial class established among Orthodox Marxists a new class category called the private managerial class, which honestly, that's what quarterbacks are. If we're just going to be serious about, the thing, you've got labor, which includes running backs, clearly. And then you've got the private managerial class, which is technically labor, but also aligns themselves with the interests of capital, that kind of stuff. So you can add, and there's been a lot of stuff on gig workers and how they interact with the rest of the economy. There was like discourse about this like a week ago, I think, about like why like essentially people who drive for Uber or DoorDash are not real workers because they own their means of production, which is like very technically kind of true because they do own their cars. That's just like a stupid way of thinking about it. And they're not employed by Uber or DoorDash or whatever, right? But like you can't take a class category invented in the 19th, or I shouldn't say invented, clarified in the 19th century, and just say, yeah, that guy files a 1099 instead of a W-2. That's how I'm gonna. That's crazy. But like you have to have some kind of analysis for what a gig worker is, and there has been discussion in Marx's writings about precariousness and independence from employment in that context. And I just got so nuts about it that I copied and pasted 5 paragraphs, all of them long, in response. So just sit down because you asked for this. This is all your faults, including James for including it in the mailbag.
Naturally.
Yeah. So in the Communist Manifesto, so the most basic Marxian document, Marx wrote it for babies, essentially. On the other end of that spectrum is capital. That's it. Those are the 2 types of Marx you get. The growing competition among the bourgeois and the resultant commercial crises make the wages of workers ever more fluctuating. The increasing improvement of machinery, even ever more rapidly developing, makes their livelihood more and more precarious. The collisions between individual workmen and individual bourgeois take more and more the character of collisions between 2 classes. So the Monthly Review, which is an online newspaper whose veracity or quality I've done nothing to verify, said that, we can take elements of this kind of analysis and apply it to gig workers. So it's inaccurate to label precarious workers as a separate class from the rest of the working class. They have the same common interests against the bosses and landlords. Even traditionally safe middle-class jobs in areas such as academia and technology development are being subject to precarious work, as over 30% of professors and lecturers in Britain are paid by the hour for papers and lectures. Unlike much of the working class, precarious workers lack many of the social benefits and rights that go with traditional employment, such as Social Security, the ability to unionize. They have less bargaining power in contract negotiations to decrease their working hours or increase their pay. The explosion of precarious work has clear winners and losers. Capitalists have benefited immensely from the rise of precarious work. On the other hand, precarious workers are one of the most exploited layers within society. Another way to think about this is Uber takes like 30% of a cut from drivers, which means that in a 60-hour work week or whatever, like 10 to 15 hours, not going to do the math, is driven for nothing. You don't get any of it. It all goes directly to Uber. That's a material employment situation, but it is not a W-2. And so that's kind of, and like Substack takes a portion and Stripe takes a portion. And I'm sure there's going to be another element where the platform I use, unless I fully develop it myself and I don't have to worry about hosting and all that, there's a precariousness there. So no, I'm not a capitalist, even though like, okay, I am a small business owner, technically, legally, but materially, maybe not. So shut up, everybody.
Do you feel better?
No.
Not in the least. I actually had a thought since you'd written all that out that I was going to skip that question and just see if I made your brain explode after like doing the work on it.
I mean, that would have been hilarious. In fact, I didn't write it. That's a copy paste. I didn't write that. Let me be clear.
All right. Leon Smorgasborg asks, when can we expect the first long-form article about the trials and tribulations of the one true king, Case Cookus, to appear on Wide Left?
I thought about it. It's been in my brain. I'm gonna like put real content on the website first, and then we can explore the possibility of meme content, and that one is at the top. I have contacts too. I could just be like, hey, I know you have Case Cook's agent's number. Let's talk about it. I have Case Cook's experts in my Rolodex, metaphorically.
You could have a companion piece too, and have him on, and like try to get him on the show.
And we've tried, and maybe
we may have the opportunity now. Side note: have you noticed how Kyle Sloter is now interacting with Vikings personalities?
Oh yeah. He tweeted out, like, he's been liking tweets that are like, the Vikings did you dirty, and he's tweeted out stuff like oh man, if only you knew the whole story, but that's too crazy. Maybe it's a story for another time. It's like, oh,
he's got the wide receiver dog in him.
Yeah, honestly.
He was replying to some Luke stuff, and like that was like
amazing,
fascinating like replies there for a little while. I was like, that's actually a really cool breakdown. Thank you, Kyle Sloter.
Amazing.
Check
that out.
What an odd year. Logan Bull Sharif asks, for Arif's Cookie Corner, what's your preferred chocolate chip recipe? Also, now that you no longer work at PFN, how much will be cutting back on your 42,000 bougie cookie DoorDash expense?
That's probably a reference to the guy that, like, so he was like an editor of like a local Tennessee newspaper, and in February he tweeted out like, man, I don't get like how you can live on like a $40,000 year, because that's like the median income, right? I think it's the median, not the median household income. How you could live on $40,000 a year. I just spent $25,000 last year on DoorDash, and he had downloaded his DoorDash data. So, and he tweeted out a screenshot of like all of the totals and where he got it. And like, oh my God, $25,000 a year on DoorDash. Okay. So also for context, the guy owns 3 cars, 3, and self-admittedly has no like mobility issues, disability issues, just doesn't drive. And it's like, okay, I mean, like, do what you need, but like, it's a crazy thing to think that that's like normal. Like, what? But then also don't do what you need, because the reason this surfaced, the reason he became kind of a main character, is because very recently it was found out that he was garnishing his employees' wages substantially, which is how an editor of a local Tennessee newspaper has the ability to afford 3 cars, $25,000 a year in DoorDash. And he tweeted out like the whole, like, he was like, this is how much I spent at Burger King. This is how much I spent at Chili's. This is how much I spent at Hooters. And that one caught my eye. I tweeted out like, what is the point of DoorDash Hooters? What are you getting out of that?
Yeah, same.
Like, what? No way. Like, what? No way.
Like, it's the Chris Rock line. Nobody goes for Hooters for wings. Like,
yeah, like, okay, like, you got Wendy's. That's food. And then Wendy's has a distinct, like, the spicy chicken sandwich is better than Burger King and McDonald's, in my opinion. It makes sense to get Wendy's if you feel like it, right? Burger King does the flame broiled thing. Maybe you get that instead of McDonald's. McDonald's has Big Macs. Like, all of that makes sense. Hooters has the wait staff, and that is famously the thing you don't get with a delivery service.
That's kind of the point, actually.
Yeah.
As it turns out.
The whole deal is that, right?
He just really wanted those fried pickles. That's all he really wanted.
But like Chili's is his top thing. He spent $3,000 last year on Chili's. Chili's is his top. I'm pretty sure they have fried pickles, right? And if they don't, Applebee's does. And that's on the list.
And Wild Wings. Well, I don't think Applebee's does, but I know the Wild Wings does.
Right, yeah. Like, these are all, and like someone pointed out, like, he's got Krispy Kreme donuts as one item and Krispy Kreme as another item and Shipley donuts as another item. So he spent, and I don't know anything about Shipley. Someone told me that there's just like a lower quality but cheaper donut, which, you know, there's room for price discrimination in the donut market. I get it. But he spent like $1,000 at Shipley donuts, and maybe they sell more than donuts, but, you know, $1,000 on Shipley donuts. And then at the first Krispy Kreme, like, is it 2 locations? Like, how? Because he just downloaded this data. Like, I assume he produced the categories based on the data that they gave him, and he copy and pasted, because there's the normal, when you convert like Unicode to HTML or vice versa, you've got like those weird errors, like the A looks funny in Chick-fil-A. And so I assume it's just copy and paste. So there must be 2 different Krispy Kremes. And for one of them, it's 310. And for the other one, it's 140. which means this guy spent about $14.50 on donuts last year. And someone made fun of that in my replies. And I was just like, okay, but I do get it. Like that one, I kind of like, I wouldn't ever spend $1,500 or $24,000 on cookies, or 42. But that's but Krispy Kreme's pretty good. Like someone's like, oh my God, he spent $400 a year on Krispy Kremes. And I'm like, when you include the delivery, like I get it. I couldn't spend $1,400 on donuts on DoorDash. Like $400 a year? I could do that. Especially Krispy Kreme. I love Krispy Kreme. But yeah, this is nuts. But yeah, it was very funny because like he was talking about how expensive stuff was, and it turns out his solution was just to steal from his employees. Which does, I mean, like in a very problem solution sense, it does solve that problem.
It somehow it does, yeah.
Yeah. Also, like $129 at PetSmart. I like.
Well,
that's, you know, like you look like last year and 2 years ago and 3 years ago, I always have this argument around Christmas where I'm just like, buying a Lexus as a Christmas gift doesn't make sense because it occupies this awkward middle category of price car. It's a quality car at its price category. I'm not saying Lexuses are bad, but like if you can afford to buy a car buy a Lexus on a whim, you can afford to buy a better car if you plan, right? Like again, not like Lexuses are bad, but you could spend up on a higher quality car if you plan versus buying a Lexus on a whim, or you can only afford a Lexus when you plan, and so it's a bad gift. So I never understood it, and I just feel like a lot of these items, like PetSmart, $129 at PetSmart is like that. Like you should either be spending way more on your pet, or you don't have a pet, right? Like is he driving to PetSmart most of the time? But this time he was like DoorDash, like. We're just out of food. I need to get this in the next 30 minutes, but most of the time I go shopping, except when it's for takeout. Like, I don't get it. Like 129 is just like a weird amount of money to spend at PetSmart.
Yeah, the whole thing is odd to be ridiculousness. Like I looked at it, and as somebody who's spent a bit on like Uber Eats and DoorDash and all that, I looked at it and like scoffed. Like dude, come on. Also, from Logan Bolsharif, question for Arif Substack corner. Now that you are on a Substack, which fellow ex-New York Times writers will you be collaborating with first? Barry Weiss on how you were canceled? Matt Iglesias on why progressives need to be moderate on abortion and how to work to ban them? Or Andrew Sullivan on whether the LGBTQ community has too many rights?
Dude, those are all. Is Matthew Iglesias former New York Times? I don't think he is. I think he's just former Vox. Let's search.
That's because that's important for the question.
Well, the question was like, "Hey, Arif, you're like other former New York Times employees." Which, by the way, I wasn't like allowed to call myself that. Which is just like. Okay, I mean, like there's the company, the New York Times, which I was employed by, but you're right, I wasn't with the paper, the New York Times, which
Correct.
Establishes a certain, like I get it, but it was funny. Like I'm not saying it was a bad policy that I wasn't allowed to, but it was very funny.
I still feel like it should end up on your business card.
It definitely wouldn't have been allowed. I'm sure, like, what are they going to do? Sue me? Like I was employed by the New York Times. Like that's just a weird thing to sue someone for. I'm sure I'd lose. They're made of lawyers, but yeah. So he's never been a former New York Times. I get it though. He's got kind of the ethic of it. But yeah, like one of his most recent articles is, I don't know if you're familiar with like Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, a very weird name, who is like is supposed to be like the AOC of centrist Democrats, which is a title. Like you, okay, that we
sure.
The thing about like centrist politics, generally speaking, is that like by its very nature, it's like hard to like get up for it. So like, what does that mean? Is it passionate centrist? I don't like. Okay, fine, whatever. But like he just has like a whole article about how like people who are really committed to being progressive or even leftist should not be mad that she's not very progressive. Um, that's like his whole deal. Like I'm not going to comment on the specifics of the piece, but like that's his whole deal. And he's the least objectionable one out of this whole list. And also, Andrew Sullivan, like so the Andrew Sullivan one is funny because so on whether the LGBT community has too many rights, Andrew Sullivan is gay, right? It's like a Dave Rubin thing where it's like he's just not into the whole gay rights deal, but he is gay. It's just like okay, cool. That's they are all on Substack. I made sure that they technically were on Substack for the purposes of this joke because I wanted to catch them in a lie, and I did. Matt Iglesias, not a New York Times guy, but yeah, man, that's look. I tweet on Twitter. You want to know who's on Twitter?
Some of the worst.
Some of the worse than these three people.
Yeah,
Andrew Sullivan's a hard one, but still worse.
Let's go to Tank.
It's like famously the guy who owns it.
Okay, yeah, fair. Tank B asks, for a Reef's hobby corner, for the first year in a long time, I'm heavily considering not getting Sunday ticket. I live outside of the market that generally airs the Minnesota Vikings games. Previously, I had access to a student discount and certainly did not split the bill with a San Francisco fan in order to further offset the costs, as that would be wrong.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. That would be wrong, and I'm glad you wouldn't do that, and I'm super glad that you clarified specifically that you didn't do that.
This level of access with the recent move is not likely to still be tenable, unfortunately. As such, what hobbies should I consider to fill my empty Saturday afternoons with and to use to ignore my family and young children instead of forming and maintaining relationships with them?
Sunday afternoons?
Sunday afternoons.
Okay, so for people unfamiliar, the NFL negotiated the Sunday ticket rights over to YouTube, who also have the ability to have their own version of NFL Red Zone. That package James and I were looking at before the show is not cheap. So I get it, especially if YouTube is not offering, YouTube TV is not offering the student discount that DirecTV, I guess, might have, which sucks. So what to do on Sunday afternoons in order to further estrange yourself from your very close family who should love and respect you, but maybe they don't. I don't know, like knitting seems wrong. That feels like it could become a social activity very quickly. And there's only so much yard work you can do. But I would just push all the housework you need to do to Sundays. That's probably the easiest way to do it because then you've got like an excuse to just not be close with or form bonds with your children in a critical developmental period for them. It's like, I got to go to Home Depot. The deck is not done quite, and then leave. With that internet, you got like the question mark in the thing, then leave. Yeah.
I mean, you could do that. There is also the option of just getting really into something kind of obscure or random. Like you're really into root beer now, or you're really into apple cider and have opinions, and you spend Sundays making your own apple cider and like trying to like perfect it. And like when people go, "Oh, that's really good," you go, "No, this is trash." Like you have to act like even indignant that they would even think that what you're doing is like getting close to good.
Like, be an IPA nerd for
something worse. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I was super into root beer. There's a lot out. There's so many types of root beer out there. There's so many. And in college, like, and I was so broke in college. It was such a bad idea. I would like pay through the nose to get root beer shipped to my dorm. Like from like all that, because it's like, oh, this is like a local root beer that is only brewed and sold in Tucson. Yeah, get it. Like, bring it to me. Let's see what's going on. Awful, stupid hobby for. I love like, but it's just soda. Like I love root beer, but come on. And here's the stupidest part. Most of the time, it wouldn't be as good as Culver's root beer that you could just get at a Culver's. Like, and that's not a low bar. Culver's root beer is phenomenal. But like, if you can't consistently beat that, like, what are you doing? But the issue is like, it has to be specific to Sunday, right? Like that's why, like on the kids are away from school, the mom has the day off. That's why dad has an excuse on that day where there's so many opportunities to bond with your kids that you refuse to, right? Football's on Sunday. And so that's the issue, is like you could do your hobby in the evening on a weekday. But the housework, yeah, you can't do that on a weekend. You got to work tomorrow.
See, I disagree. I feel like if you do something that you specifically do to exclude the family, like you're brewing beer, well, the kids can't be around for that. Like,
okay, no, that's true. Yeah.
Do something that automatically excludes anyone.
Well, just make sure all your housework has like power tools and like dangerous ones. Like don't buy from Ryobi where you've got like this great set, you've got swappable batteries and all that. Like get all of your power tools secondhand from discontinued manufacturers.
The more sparks that come out of it, the better, quite frankly.
Look, they just built stuff better back in the day, and you just got to get into that framework because you're a true craftsman. Yeah, anybody can buy a table. But could you make a table like they did in the 50s using power tools from the 70s? No.
I'm not going to correct you. We're just going to go with that timeline of making something in the 50s with things from the 70s. I'm not going to correct that. We're good. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't see the problem.
We're running into a Back to the Future situation again, aren't we? How does it always lead back to this? This is not fair. This is not okay. Why do they come to me to die? Let's go to Justin Cook, who asks, as a reformed fan of Christian rock, I greatly appreciated the Switchfoot talk and discussion on the last episode. Coincidentally, Switchfoot just re-released their biggest album, The Beautiful Letdown, with the subtitle, Our Version, a la Taylor Swift. When can we expect Arif's review of Our Version, including a track-by-track breakdown of the differences between the two versions? I'm especially curious about what he thinks about the changes made to the lyrics in Gone, specifically the shift from referencing Al Pacino to referencing Al Capone, and what does this say about how society has changed since 2003?
Why would you change it from Al Pacino to Al Capone? What? Did they like confuse when they initially were they like Al Pacino is like a real gangster, and it's like you didn't realize that they were talking about the actor?
I don't.
Oh my god! I think that's exactly. I just looked up the lyrics. That is exactly what happened. That's so funny. Oh my god! Because the lyric is "Gone like Frank Sinatra, like Elvis and his mom." Weird line. Like Al Pacino's cash, nothing lasts in this life, and like that is technically true. When Al Pacino, the actor, dies, the cash will be gone, and also he'll spend it. So certainly. He won't always have the money, but like Al Capone, like lost a lot of it all at once because he got caught on racketeering charges. Like that's a very important element of the Al Capone story. It does not seem like the fact that Al Pacino spends money that he earns as an actor is not like a critical element to the Al Pacino story. That has to be that's amazing. This is like, I can't think of a more Christian rock band move than being like, oh, Al Pacino's not actually a gangster? Oh, boy.
Our bad.
Oh gosh. That's amazing. That concludes my review of the re-release.
Of the 2003 Switchfoot Classic. So I've got one more question here, and perhaps this is good, perhaps this is a bad way to end, but I guess we'll see. It's from Damian Barrett, who asks, question for Arif's chauffeur corner.
What?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how bougie is it to get a tow company to move your car for you because you're too lazy to do it yourself?
Okay. Boy, I've got a lot of feelings associated with this one.
It's not like you've had anything happen with your car recently.
So, okay. In the last, like, 5 months, my car has been towed like 3 times. And one of those times was my fault. I mean, the car was outside of my house. But like I was gone. I was gone for like a month. And I had forgotten to leave my car. My car keys were just on my keychain. So I'd forgotten to leave my car keys with Chelsea so that like she could move the car if there was like, for example, a snow day. And I tried express shipping them back. And the keys just didn't arrive in time. And so that's like my fault. It was very infuriating. And the process by which I could enable Chelsea to pick up the car from the lot was so I had to find a notary in like a foreign country. I had to like fax a bunch of, it was just like crazy how much work I had to do. And like I accrued like thousands of dollars in storage fees. It sucked. It was like my fault, but in a way I feel like I'm being disproportionately punished, right? Like if you like shoplift, like you shouldn't have to pay a $20,000 fine. That's not what I ended up having to pay, but it's just as an example of an extreme response to, yeah, that's your fault kind of thing. But like one of the times my car was towed in the last 5 months was Monday. So okay, I don't share like a ton of my personal life, or especially stuff that like sucks that's happening to me. But this one is like a funny enough / infuriating enough story. I might as well. So people who might not know, like I've been in a very long, arduous process of moving. It involves like selling a house, and it's just taking a long time for like a number of reasons. I didn't have access to my car, also related, for like 8 weeks because my car just like broke, and there's a parts shortage. And so I had to like send it into the shop. And so like a lot of the stuff associated with being able to move out of the house was just delayed. My laptop didn't work for like a couple of weeks. I had to get it repaired, and a bunch of repair places didn't have like Lenovo parts. Yeah, it sucked. So I get like the car back, right? I can finally drive it, and the car's had forever had a transmission problem, and I was able to fix it, right? Like, okay, cool. That's awesome. I'm in the process of moving. And so I've done a change of address for most of my stuff. And I scheduled a change of address for the car registration and my driver's license. But that takes like a long time because you have to prove that you've changed addresses, which requires that you get bills to your new address, which takes a second.
And Minnesota is just notorious for that.
Yeah, you know, it's cool. Like I could vote now for my new location, but I can't change my car registration. That's nuts to me. But yeah, like, so the day I launched my new Substack, so I launched it like at 9:30 in the morning. And then, at 1 PM, someone like rings the doorbell, and it's like, "Hey, is that your car outside?" The window got smashed in, and I was like, "Oh Christ!" Okay, so the window is like smashed in. Like I thought, like there was hail like a couple of days ago, and like maybe, you know, I don't know. Like I inspected the car after hail, there's no damage, but like I just like felt like surely the car couldn't have been smashed in, and it was. Like the window is gone, and nothing was taken from the car because I'm like moving, but like most of the stuff was moved by a U-Haul. The most valuable stuff was put into the house right away. So it's like a box of kitchen towels, right? A pull-up bar. Just like it doesn't matter. And they didn't take it. So like, okay, cool. Like the old router that probably only works with CenturyLink stuff anyway. So why did I bring it from the house? Like that, I don't care. But yeah, so the car smashed in, nothing is taken. I look at like everything's fine. So I'm like, okay, great. I talked to my insurance company. I get it scheduled for, window repair. That super fast in comparison to like my radiator dying. That's a super fast fix. I've got a safe light appointment Wednesday, right? Okay, cool. So I go back inside and I order DoorDash, of course. I DoorDash some cookies and donuts, obviously. No, I DoorDash like Indian food from Dancing Ganesha. And it arrives. I go outside. I look, and there is a shadow of broken glass where the car should be. Is just gone. And I'm like, oh.
Like it was snapped out of existence.
Yeah. It's like, okay, that's cool. Great. Awesome. I'm going to eat this and then I'm going to make some phone calls. And
The reasonable decision at that point, actually.
yeah. And it's like, this is the day I launched my Substack. I'm making like tons of phone calls already. And I was like, I'm a millennial, right? It's just like, I don't want to spend time on my phone talking to people. This sucks. And so it's like, well, okay, the first thing to do is to see if it's like impounded. So I go to the website, see it's impounded. Okay, great. I don't have to, see if it's stolen. Like, okay, that's the best possible world. So I'm like trying to call the impound lot. No one's picking up. I eventually get a ride there. My roommate. I eventually get a ride there. It closes at 10. I get there at like 9:15. So there's like a lot of time. And I go up to them. I'm like, hey, you have my car. Why? I'm confident I did not violate. Like, it is not illegal to have a car with a broken window outside of your home. Like, it's just like not. Like, it just isn't. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. So here's what happened. Your car looked like it had been stolen because the window was smashed in and it has the make of commonly stolen cars. So for people who are unfamiliar, there's been a lot of carjackings in Minneapolis, and primarily it's been Kia and Hyundais. And I have a Hyundai. And so they thought it was stolen. And I was like, okay, quick question. Did they run the VIN through their system? Because I filed a police report earlier today when the window was smashed. And on the police report, I had indicated not only where the incident occurred, but also where I'm living. And they're like, yeah, we ran the VIN. There was no reported thefts on the car. And I was like, okay, you ran it through the car theft system, but not the car crime system or whatever. Like, I didn't report property damage. I reported damage to a vehicle. There was a radio button option on the website on the police report. So it's like, it's in the car section, crime section of your website. And they're like, yeah. So we ran the registration, and the address associated with the registration was not where the car was. So they suspected it was stolen. I was like, okay, so they thought it was an unreported stolen vehicle because the window was smashed in. And so they just took it?
Yeah, it's theirs. It's theirs now.
And he was like, yeah, they just took it. They towed it for safekeeping. I was like, oh, for safekeeping. So it's like a service the city provides. And he's like, yeah. Okay, so I don't have to pay the tow fee. And he's like, no, you got to pay the tow fee. I was like, what? I what? It's like, look, man, this is not really, I was being sarcastic when I said service, because what if I needed to use, I don't know, a car? And it just wasn't like, it's not convenient to go to central Minneapolis to pick up my car. Cause like the problem is I don't have transportation for what should at this point be self-evident. Like, that's not good. But now I have to pay. And they were like, yeah, because like it's better, right? For if the car is here than if it's stolen. Like it costs less than if it's stolen. That's thousands of dollars you're out of. And I was like, okay, you have to understand, my car was stolen by the cops. Like like of the two types of like, there's the third option is that they don't do anything, right? And he's like, yeah, but like, it's a commonly stolen car. And I was like, yeah, someone stole it. Like I look.
As it turns out,
yeah,
it was stolen. All they had to do was nothing.
Yeah, right. I was like, what's going on? Like, I just have to like the window was like, is that it? And they were like, and I was like, okay, so here's the problem I have. Let's say I take this car, my car, by the way, this car, the one I own, it's on the registration. Let's go to the glove box. Let's find out. Like, we know it's mine. So I take this car, I bring it back to the place I live, the place that it has taken me weeks to change the registration on, because I don't have a bill yet. And the driver's license office just rejected one of my forms of ID because my pay stub doesn't have the right address on it. Like, you get like, this is a process, right? So I take it back to this house that I'm living at, and a cop comes by it and sees a smashed window because I haven't had time to repair it yet, they're just going to tow it again, right? And the guy was like, well, do you have a garage? And I was like, look, man, if I had a garage, what kind of question is that?
Well, I mean, listen, if you have a garage you could put this car in, then it wouldn't get towed again. I feel like this is what you should go for. Do you have well, how about this? How about I get you on the line with somebody who can get you a permit to build the garage? If garages famously don't take long to build, we can get you the permit to build the garage, and then you can put the car in it, and you won't have to be towed. Like, we can knock this out in an afternoon. Why are you laughing? Why? I'm trying to help you, sir. I don't want you or your frequently stolen vehicle
to be stolen
by the cops again.
So I'm just like, well, I'm getting nowhere with this guy. The guy might have the authority to reverse the tow, but that's just not happening. It's like, it doesn't even and he's being super friendly, and he's doing here's the thing about the tow place. Everyone there is dealing with somebody's worst day, right? Like if you're an employee there, all you get is the bad side of, I get it, right? And I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but this is like I use the words Kafka-esque a lot, but literally that, right? I'm paying to get my car back from the cops who were protecting me from the theft that they committed, right? That's crazy. And it's just I'm just like, look, can you get look, I didn't want, no one wants this. Can you just get rid of it? It's like, you have to pay the tow company. And I was like, the way to avoid that is to not steal people's cars, right? And that's not my fault. That's their fault. And he's like, look, man, we got to pay the tow. And I was like, okay, this is just not happening. Maybe you're just being cheerful and you benefit from this. Even though I don't think you do. I think you just make money by that. It doesn't matter how many cars get towed, but fine, whatever. So I pay this tow fee, $150, right? And they drive me out to my car. I go into the car, and the steering column is all jacked up. It's impossible to start the car. There's no place to put my key. And I was like, okay, one of two things happened. Someone did try to steal the car in the interim because that damage wasn't there when I first looked at it at 1, right? So someone did try to steal the car and failed, despite this being a famously easy car to steal, evidently, right? These are the cars people steal.
From what you've been told.
Yeah. And they failed to do that in the couple hours in between. It is a really active neighborhood. And I know this because my roommate is in a Ring chat because he's got a Ring doorbell, which, again, that's not me. Don't put that on me. He had it. But he's in a Ring chat, and it's an active Ring chat. And he asked if I wanted to be added to it. Absolutely no, I don't. But it's active, and he's like, yeah, I'll just let everybody know in the Ring chat that someone smashed your car in, and it's an active, people are outside all the time. So I would be surprised, but it is possible. That seems more likely than it happening in the impound lot, but that is also a possibility. And so I'm there, and it's oh, I can't take this car. I can't start the car. It's done. Great. So I go back, and I'm okay, I don't want this guy to be told you. That would I would really be heated. But he was great about it. He was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. That sucks so much. You have 2 days. And I was like, what?
It's going to turn into that Simpsons thing where Mr. Burns, your car has been crushed to a cube. You now have 24 hours to move your cube.
Yeah, it's my car is basically, he was like, your insurance is probably going to call it totaled. You have 2 days to get it out of the lot. And I was like, oh, dope. So now
what does he expect you to do? Tow it to a Walmart parking lot or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I think my insurance is just supposed to handle it, and maybe, I don't know. But at the moment, I'm just what? Am I supposed to dump it in front of the house so you guys tow it again? What do I do? But like, yeah, I'm like, oh. And he's like, yeah, but the 2 days are free. And I'm like, okay, look, dude. Like, can you not? But the 2 days are free? That's crazy. I don't have to pay an $18 a day storage fee for the 2 days.
He's not trying to nickel and dime you see. That $36 is for you.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh, okay. And like, I like call the insurance company the next morning, right? Which, that's today of the recording. Like, technically it's after midnight, but today of the recording. And I'm like, okay, because normally you could just do it all online. They prefer you do it over an app. They don't want to pay employees to man the phones, like every company nowadays. And it took a long time to find the way to file a claim over the phone. They just don't want you to do it. And the phone was like, we could send you a text. You could download the app. I was like, I get it. I've got questions. So I call them and I'm just like, okay, is this the same claim or a new claim? And also, will you take action against the police for me? So the answer to the last one is no. And I was also like, can you cover my tow fee? And they were like, no. And I was like, nah, all right.
Yeah, that was worth a shot.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to happen, but like, look, come on.
You need better insurance. A sentence I can say.
Yeah, right. And so they're like, okay, yeah, I understand like why you would think that maybe you should add on to the current claim. I understand why this is a question, but like you have a separate insurance. I mean, it's through us still. But you have a separate insurance just for the, I mean, everybody who has car insurance has separate insurance for the glass, right? And so you filed a glass claim and this is, not that. So you have to file like a new claim and it's like vandalism and whatever. And we'll get an assessor out there as soon as possible to take pictures of the car and figure out the damages. And I was like, okay, I have been through this process a couple of times now, unfortunately. And whatever assessors that you have that live here are very busy or take their time or I don't know, both. But I got like 2 days, I think. I don't know what happens after I assume I pay, but I don't know, maybe they auction a broken car. I think the policy is I get 30 days, you don't pick it up, they auction it, which is a problem with the last 2 times ago when I was in another country. I was like a day or two away from the deadline when they would auction it. Technically I was past it, but they do it on cycles, so whatever. But like, I was like, I don't want to like bump someone else off who like clearly they're also having a bad time because their car's broken, but like there's a time element here. Can you move it to the top? Because your guy took a while last 2 times. And he was like, yeah, I'll see what I can do, but I think I can. And I was like, okay, thanks, man.
Yeah.
You just lie. You just lie to me.
I feel like you're lying to me.
Yeah. I prefer you do it like outright instead of this like maybe. Just say you can next time. Just say you can, and it's out of you can't control it. It's out of your hands. Just say that you can do it, and I'll be happy for 2 days. Give me that. So yeah. Anyway, what Damien's question was about whether it was bougie to tow a car to move it. Yeah, if that's the point, but it's. I'm at the moment where it feels like that's never the point.
Like I kind of just want my car.
Yeah, I didn't have it for 8 weeks, and I get it back, and someone smashes the window in, and somehow that's not even the worst part of it. Like, that's crazy.
Well, I mean, sometimes the cops steal your car, and you just kind of have to deal with it.
Yeah, and like the thing is, I've heard of cops stealing cars, but like actually, that's what civil asset forfeiture is. Sorry, look it up. It sucks. And that's technically not what happened. The cops, I assume, don't profit from it. Maybe. You never know. And from civil asset forfeiture, they do. So, but now I've learned of another way cops can steal your car to protect you.
Yes.
From theft.
I just love the fix for this is you can drive it home, where it can potentially get stolen again by the cops because of the exact same situation that got it taken the first time.
Do you have a garage? God, dude.
You have a carport? Like,
maybe like a driveway you could put that.
like just off the street slightly. Well, maybe they'd take it from a driveway. We don't know.
Yeah, right.
How,
Like, okay, so I did. They were like, it didn't match the address on the registration. I was like, did the cops like knock on the door of the house it was in front of? And the guy was like, but they can't knock on every door. And I was like, okay, first of all, yes, they can. They're the police. Like they can 100% do that.
They can just knock and do crap. Like that's a thing.
They are so ridiculously empowered to do that specific thing. That's just an effort question at that point. It's an effort and care question. But also, I'm not asking them to knock on every door of the neighborhood. This car was parked outside of a house. What house? It was not straddling the line between two houses, and that also wouldn't be an issue if it was. It was parked the passenger side door was right in front of the path that leads straight to the house. It was very clear, which I'm not asking them to knock on every door, just the one the house is in front of. Because, like, look, if someone stole the car and dropped it off in front of the house, there's got to be some probability that the thief lives in that house, right? Like, or, I don't know, the owner of the car? Like, that, I just feel like you got to, why didn't they do that? And he's like, that's just not standard practice. And I was like, okay, that just asks a slightly different version of the same question, which is, why is that not standard practice? And he goes, I don't know. I'm not a police officer. And it's like, okay, you're right, but like,
you're ordering DoorDash Hooters at this point. Like,
yeah, right, yeah, right.
You've got something going in one direction. You're not going to be able to go the other.
One direction. Jesus.
It wasn't? No, I kind of want to...
I know it wasn't, but it's like we've been talking about Switchfoot, you know.
I kind of want to have the show title now be Ordering DoorDash Hooters. Like, what?
Yeah, we had a couple of great possibilities for the show title.
Good Lord. All right, so we're gonna put a bow on this. That's Arif's tale of woe involving his car.
Someone I was telling this story to someone, and I was like, yeah, I paid $150 to like see my car for a second. like there's a custody agreement. Yeah, right. Yeah.
There was like some emergency thing through a judge, and the only way you could do it was pay $150 in order to get a few minutes at a Burger King that's supervised, because I bet they still had an employee over there as you were trying to get the thing going. Wow, this episode went completely off the rails. We hope you enjoyed it.
James was like, I think this could be a short episode, and I was like, no, you don't.
An attempt was made, and I shot myself in the foot, like so many Arif songs before me. A quick pimpage of your work.
Yeah, that car story moved you.
I love the off season.
Yeah, right. If you want to talk about Najee Thompson for like another 20 minutes. Hey, I don't know if you heard that, like, yeah, I've going through a rough time. Things have gotten worse since then. And hey, update to the things have gotten worse since then post. But no, okay. So, I'm publishing over at wideleftpost.substack.com. The name of the Substack is Wide Left. I've got one piece up already. I plan to publish there specifically 2 to 3 times a week. I want to make sure that I've got at least one piece of Vikings content every week. And then anytime I do freelance or I'm a guest on someone's podcast, I'll in a roundup piece, which is going to be completely free to everybody. And I'll have other pieces that'll be free, or substantial portions of paid pieces that are going to be free. I'm gonna make sure that like anybody who wants to keep up with me can have a place that they do that at least once a week. So head over there. I'm going to be writing about the NFL. I'm going to be writing about the Vikings. I'm going to be writing about the politics of the NFL, the politics as they relate to the NFL, and sometimes just politics, but mostly it's going to be football stuff. Head over there. It's my new venture. It's terrifying for a lot of reasons, and I'm trying to navigate this space as I go.
Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. For Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember to just put your car in your garage next time. And we'll see you next week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog, at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of Pro Football Network, and he can be found at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a few different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merchandise. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
Hey, all things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.